Welcome to North Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, how are you doing this Super Bowl week?
I'm doing all right, I guess.
Seems like
what I mean to say is I'm super pumped for the big game.
Yes, the superb owl. It seems like, and I was having a discussion about this before the show. It seems like all the QB talk and all the QB trade stuff that seems to be going around right now is a direct result of the lack of media day. Like everyone's used to going out to wherever the Super Bowl is, gathering, hanging out with all of your friends, the writers you never see, and all this, and there's all this pent up energy for the game, and it's being released in the form of San Francisco is trying to trade for Kirk Cousins tweets.
Yeah. Frankly, I prefer it. I've always hated Super Bowl Media Day, which was supercharged when it was in Minneapolis. So great. I got a bunch of instructions over email about how to do Media Day over Zoom, and I did not open those emails. I don't care.
Just like, no. I do not wish to be person 1800 in this Zoom call.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Unnecessary.
Also joining us for this episode is a former host of the show, degenerate gambler extraordinaire, and generally useful human, Dusty O'Connell.
Hello.
Did you lean into the mic for that?
Maybe.
Yes. Okay. Hey, Dusty, how's it going?
Good. I have some exciting news to report.
That you are alive and well, and please say that out loud and concisely.
Yes, if you can hold up if you can hold up today's newspaper too, that would be great.
I'm doing it as hard as I can. But yeah, if I could hijack the show for a second, this might be of interest to a couple of people listening. I have been selected to be on the next season of a podcast called America's Next Top Podcaster. So you'll have a chance to see me compete with 11 other current and aspiring podcasters in a podcast match to the death. So
are you gonna be in a house filled with the aspiring podcasters?
Unfortunately, no.
This show sucks. I hate it. I mean, congrats, Dusty. But man.
So yeah, for details, America's Next Top Podcaster.com. They have not announced a release date yet, but more.
They haven't already filmed. Like, are you going to film? Has it already been filmed?
It has not been recorded yet. There's not a whole lot more I can say about it right now. Obviously, embargoes and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Don't want to spoil the surprise. And I think they're doing an earlier rollout for Patreon subscribers. So if you're that thirsty for it, check out their site and subscribe to their Patreon, and you might get new episodes a little early. But
so there's no camera, because you specified recorded, so there's no camera element.
Correct. It is a podcast in the truest sense of the word. Looks a lot like Norse code, so you can just imagine me looking however you think I look.
Okay, well
which is alive, to be fair.
Right. This is phenomenal evidence of your liveliness. I'm really glad that you've decided to do this show that we're unaffiliated with.
Yes.
Well, you're welcome.
It's all right. I think I said the exact same thing when Arif took the athletic gig, so don't worry about it, Dusty. It's fine.
So I can't say that one of the prizes for the winner is they'll get a music producer to do music and intro stuff and outro stuff for your podcast. So I don't know. Maybe I'll win, and we can get James out of here, and I can resume my throne, and we can raise the production values a little bit. Just a thought.
The idea,
like getting James out of here, huh? Kick off the producer, but from everything.
Be like
and we'll increase the production value.
Just trying to give the listeners what they want.
This is not. Hold on now. This is not. There
Sorry,
is
the top prize actually professionally produced podcasting? Is that?
Yeah, they help you. You get some consult and some goodies to start a new show, if that is your desire.
One of your best friends is an audio engineer. What are you doing?
This is
I already plied him to upgrade the music for Norse Code once.
accurate. I literally went to the source and spoke to the head of Rhyme Sayers himself. Yeah. I have the documentation to prove it. Yeah. This is, Dusty, what you're trying to do is basically the podcast version of the Brock Osweiler trade. And I'm not entirely sure that it works in this context, but I wish
I've
you
already
luck.
got a fake Rolex picked out for your retirement.
Well, it'll match.
I mean, not a fake Rolex. I already have a Rolex picked out for your retirement gift.
It'll match my my knockoff pride then too. Welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are doing well. Again, this is some more of that postseason content. We will be doing our standard stuff. We have a 3-man pod this episode. We will be doing prop bets. We have plenty of stuff here for Reef and Dusty to go over. We also do have a number of things to talk about as far as the NFC North is concerned. After the prop bets, we will go over the big trade between the Lions and the Rams. The most notable portions involving Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, and a number of picks that are going Detroit's way as a result of that trade. So we will be discussing that. We'll also be talking about a potential potential interview rather for the offensive coordinator position for the Vikings, and of course the mailbag. But before we start, once again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you find yourself with nothing to do on Super Bowl Sunday and are a subscriber to our Patreon, you can go ahead and join the watch along that will be happening during the Super Bowl. Again, we'll be starting that sometime about 4:30ish or so on Super Bowl Sunday for the game kickoff, sometime around 5:15, 5:20, if I remember correctly. So we'll be starting it sometime around 4:30 this coming Sunday for the game. A number of people usually come on. It's usually a good time. Arif may or may not be able to make it. I forget if I've mentioned it to you, Dusty, but if you have nothing going on, you're more than welcome to stumble on.
Yeah, put the pressure on him.
Be like, Dusty will be there. No, I'm not gonna do that. But if you find yourself with nothing to do, we will be doing that on Sunday during the game for the entirety of it. It's the lack of socialization that's kind of driving me a little bit insane. And the Super Bowl should be enjoyed with people. And if you don't have people, we can be your people for $3.50 a month over at Patreon.com. Join us there for bonus episodes.
Incredible.
I'm on fire right now for bonus episodes for the Zoom watch-alongs and all of that. So also just want to thank these two lovely individuals, Matt Brooks and Denver Ludvigsen, who have joined us over at Patreon. Again, thank you so much. You can also donate to the show over at paypal.me/NorseCode. That's much more of a one-time donation process. Or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and check out the collections in order to send your child a bona fide Norse Code Nessie onesie. It's a fantastic way to wrap your child up and be warm in this cold time of year, right? Right. There's also the Norse Code mask as well, t-shirts and whatever, but really that's all child's play stuff. What you really want is that Norse Code onesie to help celebrate Arif's parenting corner. So all of that aside, thank you guys so much for listening. Really do appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words for the last episode. Again, we could not have hit 1 million listens without you guys. So again, thank you so much for letting us kind of let out a little bit of steam there. And thank you so much. And just kind of take a moment and go, wow, we actually hit that. Cool. Didn't know we were going to do that. So again, thank you guys so much. Let's get into the show. And we have plenty of prop bets. And I don't know exactly where you want to start, but there are 2 prop bets that have caught my attention that I wanted to mention before we really got deep into it. And because they tend to be on brand with Norse Code and our hatred of kickers or dislike of kickers or just general malaise toward kickers, there's 2 prop bets worth mentioning. First off, will any kick hit an upright?
I mean,
plus 625 for a yes.
So Ryan Suckup is one of the kickers, right?
Yes.
And anybody who's had him in the Norse Code League is probably fairly familiar with his ability to hit the upright. So that's a problem. I forget who the Chiefs kicker is because in my head it's Chandler Catanzaro, but he hasn't been the kicker for like 3 years. Oh, Harrison Butker.
Yeah,
right.
Butker's not been great either.
Yeah, he's hit an upright once, I think, this year, but otherwise he's missed.
And
when he
now,
has
to be
missed.
fair, this is also uprights only, not the crossbar. This is uprights only, which could lead to some real pain if it ends up hitting the crossbar and like just kind of nuzzles it gently against the upright.
Right. We were discussing this before the show. It would be a tremendously bad beat if it not just hits the crossbar, but if it hits the crossbar and like caresses an upright on its way in or out. Because then you have to argue with whatever casino that you logged the bet with, whatever bookie.
Yeah,
and they're famously willing to pay out bets,
oh god, yeah, they're just willing to send out a helping hand. And the other one that I thought was worth mentioning was, will there be a missed extra point? Yes, at 195. And if you're not cheering, Dusty and I were talking about this earlier, and I think Dusty even said, like, if you're not cheering for this, why are you listening to this episode? Like, why are you listening to Norse Code?
I think you have to lodge at least one unit on this one.
Yes.
You have to, I think.
If you are a Norse Code listener, this is your bread and butter. This is why you're here.
Yeah, like, okay, yeah, the payout's pretty good if it happens. Great, fantastic. But the potential loss of seeing it happen and not having lodged that bet, I can't imagine the psychic damage you'll be doing to yourself.
Yeah,
really, you have to do this for your own well-being.
This isn't necessarily a lock in the same sense as, Anthony Kiedis performing without a shirt. But I am saying
we'll never have a lock as legendary as that.
No, it's still pretty good. So, Dusty, what do you like this year as far as the MVP voting?
Well, just to reel it back 1 second, I kind of like both the hit and upright and the miss an extra point attempt bets, both for all the reasons you described. But thinking about the Super Bowl and the coaches, I think they'll be less likely to go for. They'll be more likely to go for it rather than kick a field goal in a lot of situations, except for situations where they're kind of out of options. So I think we might see, long field goals and difficult field goals. I think if they're close enough to even potentially justify going for it, they will, and that'll take away some of the easy field goal attempts that would make these bets less appealing. As far as MVP goes, yeah, I hate this bet. I never take it just because unless I like know who's going to win the Super Bowl. Like this ended up being one of the only bets I won last year, and I think I gotta double down this year and pick Patrick Mahomes.
So Patrick Mahomes is, the odds aren't even great, right? Like
the odds are never that great for the obvious guys. It's never going to be Chris Godwin. Like,
right. Any defensive player plus 1900, that's not going to happen, especially not in this one. Like it would have made sense in 2015 when they were both defensive teams. But yeah, I can't imagine any defensive player is going to earn it. I would love to eat those words, by the way, because that sounds like a fun Super Bowl because they would probably have to end up scoring.
They would have to. Like some of the MVP voting, you just sit there like, what kind of game would have to be played for Chris Godwin to be voted for the MVP? Like,
yeah, because the year that James White probably should have earned it, Tom Brady got it, right?
Yes.
Like it's
I think Tom Brady even like went, you have the truck. I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
What do you think the chances are that the Chiefs win the Super Bowl and Tom Brady wins MVP?
Low. I think it's really low.
Basically zero, right? But it would be funny, right? Like it would.
Oh yeah.
It would only happen.
It would fuel all the fun narratives that we have for sure. That's a talker.
Yeah, that's particularly terrible. Over under height of the tallest player to score a touchdown.
So I was excited about this for two reasons, and after looking it up, I'm no longer as excited. So I thought Tom Brady's listed height was 6'5", and I assume they're going to go by the official team listing and not like whether or not they did it at the combine 20 years ago or whatever, which is probably more accurate, honestly, than team listings, but whatever. But the team listing for Tom Brady is 6'4". I thought it was 6'5". So that sucks because you can't get the QB sneak. Patrick Mahomes is not over 6'4", so you can't get that. And so then on the Chiefs side, you're essentially restricted to Travis Kelce because all of their other touchdown scorers this year, aside from Eric Fisher, so obviously if they have a trick play to a tackle, that would work. But aside from Travis Kelce, it's like Tyreek Hill, it's Mecole Hardman, it's any other running backs, Demarcus Robinson, all people below 6 feet, much less 6'4". So you have to look at Tampa Bay side. And I thought Chris Godwin was over 6'4", and that's dumb because the timeline had a conversation about this like 4 weeks ago, like not that long ago, that Chris Godwin is in fact not 6'4", he's 6'1", and he just plays super tall. So you're left with, and it's not like a just, but you're essentially left with Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate, because I don't think OJ Howard's going to be healthy, right? So, and that's kind of it because you don't get Tom Brady. Well, in that case, or a trick play, right? If it's to a tackle, which is possible, but in that case, the odds would have to be pretty good, right, for you to want to take this, because saying, "Hey, I think at some point one of Travis Kelce, Mike Evans, or Cameron Brate, or Rob Gronkowski are going to score," feels pretty good, but I don't think you'll get that at like minus 120, right? Because it's the tallest player to score TD. So whoever, if any of them score, you cash in, right? And that feels pretty good. I would want it to be probably minus 130 or better before I take that.
I would take it if it was less than like plus 150. Because
really,
everybody you mentioned except for Brate is minus to score a touchdown individually, and so I'm not getting some good juice on that. Like if it's not, it would never happen, and that's why I'm not going to, and that's why I would take the under if I was going to make this bet.
You'll short it, if you will.
Or yes. See, what happened was
no. We're not going into that.
I'm just saying Patrick Mahomes threw more touchdowns than were available.
but literally every other form of media and all my friends have already explained this to me. I feel like I need to explain it to someone, or else, like, what happens? Does the stock go down? Like,
I have to keep talking and explaining this, otherwise the world will end. Do you not understand?
So anyway, the app Robinhood.
And I've lost control of the show. Over under on the number of Super Bowl commercials that reference first responders / healthcare workers. Is it 3?
I would take the over on that. So Dusty clarified pre-show whether or not it said essential workers or first responders / healthcare workers. And I think that because they'll be miserly in paying out, it'll have to be specifically healthcare workers or first responders. And I'm going to still take the over on that, despite that. So I assume Super Bowl commercial means any commercial that occurs after kickoff and before the end of the game.
Yes.
I would probably only take the under if it was Super Bowl halftime commercials, right? But I think we're going to see over 3. And it sucks that it's not 2.5, that it's 3. But I'll still take the over because I think, was that?
I say a number of brands have even said a couple of weeks ago that they were not going to be running their traditional show. They were not going to be running their traditional ads. In fact, they were going to be having some form of a tribute for the first responders that have been helping out with COVID. So, like, this is a sucker's bet if you take the under.
I think so.
I think it's a sucker's bet either way. Like, what am I going to have to get into an argument with a bookie or a casino over whether, like, flashing a picture of an actor in Scrubs counts as referencing healthcare workers? Because I feel
like CBS or whoever did that in their tribute, and it was just people that have played the roles of the people they're thanking.
Very on brand. Yeah,
that would be amazing.
We've done the research, and it turns out this was part of casting. These weren't real workers.
The cast.
Like, oh wait, Rob Lowe's not really a firefighter? Go on.
No, but he has an amazing hat in the stands. Do you want to see him? The most amazing NFL hat.
No, we're probably going to get like a Morgan Freeman Visa commercial exclusively devoted to like healthcare workers. I would take the over on this.
No, see, I like the under because I think what we're really going to see is very generalized commercials that, may show like, little images here and there of, Rob Lowe fighting fires or other nonsense, but mostly broad sentiments like, in these unprecedented times, we thank you.
Well,
I'm pretty sure that-
you make it sound like the commercials are crafted in a way to avoid specifically this bet, which I don't think is the case.
No, I just think they're going to be designed to appeal to as many people as possible. And
that makes sense. This does say reference first responders and healthcare workers, so it doesn't have to have text. It could have images. So if it's "we thank you" and then there's like an image of someone being pushed through an ER, that counts.
Okay, I'm still going to take the under and then take my push when it's 3.
Yeah, fair enough. I am not excited to try and I will try and tally it, but I am not excited to try and tally it because I don't really want to pay too much attention to the commercials.
No, it's okay. Dusty will give his version of whether or not.
Yeah, right. This doesn't count. You're gonna have to describe every single commercial that could possibly meet it, and then why you don't think it counts.
On the plus
I will
side,
live tweet it. I will surely not lose any followers.
I was gonna say, like,
I'll retweet them.
yeah, you people know why you're following Dusty at this point. Like, if this scares you, what do you mean, you people? Over under length of time after kickoff before first reference to the first responders / healthcare workers in the stands is at 179 and a half seconds.
It's at 3 minutes.
Yep.
Minutes.
I'll take the under.
Same. That's one of the first things they're going to show.
Yeah.
Over under time of first Giselle Bundchen / Mrs. Brady reference is the end of the first quarter.
I'm going to take the over because it's Tony Romo and Jim Nantz. If it was Al Michaels, absolutely take the under. But
Michaels,
this doesn't feel
Al Michaels would find a way to squeeze that in.
Yeah. This feels like something that they're not going to focus too much on that stuff. It's like I've noticed that in Romo Nantz broadcasts, they care a little bit less about that stuff until you get to the fourth quarter and Tony Romo's clearly loopy from talking for 2 hours. Which is the best Tony Romo, by the way. Yes. Because he gets jazzed about anything. Like, obviously about football, and he just goes, woo, ah, hey, whoa. It's great. But I think that they like to focus a little bit more on football. So, which is tough because it's the Super Bowl, and the last thing it's about is football. But I still think it's going to be an over. Dusty, you probably know this better than I do. What do you think?
Not really. I mean, this is a bet that I would not take. But if you twisted my arm, I'm with you. I'd take the over.
Okay.
Next one, over under Tony Romo saying, "Let me tell you, Jim," is at 2.
I don't know, actually. I mean, clearly it's memed enough that it ended up on a prop bet, so that pushes me towards the over. But I don't really know kind of how often Romo says it. If it was like Collinsworth saying, "Here's a guy," I would pound the over. But let me tell you, Jim, I mean, I've heard him say it, but I don't know that it feels so common that I'd want to. I guess, like Dusty says, if you twist my arm, I'll take the over because it's fun. But this is definitely not a bet I would take.
So yeah, again, this is another bet I would not take, but I disagree with Arif. I think I would take the under and then accept my push when it's exactly twice.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that like it sounds so good on like, oh yeah, he would totally say that a couple of times, and then during the actual broadcast, he maybe says it once. You're like, oh, but it made so much sense to me. You just easily talk yourself.
Yeah,
into
a lot of these bets you can talk. I mean, that's how prop bets work.
Yes.
You construct a narrative of how the game's going to go, and it never goes that way because you're constructing a scenario. It's 1 in a billion odds, but you construct a narrative of how the game goes, and you convince yourself that it's. I mean, that's just how stupid human meat brains work.
Yeah. Over under number of plays Tony Romo correctly predicts in advance 2.5.
Under, absolutely under. He just hasn't done that gimmick this year. He did it a ton in the playoffs last year, especially with calling essentially 3 plays in a row to Rob Gronkowski in a 2-minute drive, which was super impressive. And obviously he did it a ton when he was first a broadcaster. Not because he was showing off, although obviously he was doing that, but also because it's how he knew how to interact with the broadcast. He does it a lot less now. And I think it's fine. Like, I think it was great when he did it. I think it's fine. He's really good when he doesn't do it. It doesn't really matter to me. I think that it's not really a gimmick in the same way that a lot of people who hate it call it a gimmick. But he just does it a lot less. And I think that this kind of mythology of Tony Romo, the broadcaster, is built up that people really just like they remember that about him, and so they'll take the over. So I think this is a sucker's bet. I'll take the under.
Agree. I think this bet is made for people that are sort of casual fans that are like, oh yeah, Tony Romo does do that a lot. And then they hit the over without really thinking about it or knowing what you just said.
Yeah, and wasn't this a prop last year and it didn't happen? Like, I feel like we already have experience with this.
I don't remember which TV channel had the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
But they usually don't have it twice in a row.
That's a good point. Anyway, I feel like I've talked about this, or I've seen some conversation about him doing it in the game after he predicted a bunch of plays and he didn't predict a single play, which makes it feel like he underperformed as a broadcaster, but that's like not literally his job.
So this year's national anthem bets are length of national anthem by Eric Church and Jasmine Sullivan, 120.5 seconds. But here is your prop for Anthony Kiedis, or that style of one. Odds Eric Church wears sunglasses during the national anthem is 9-1, is plus 900.
So I am aging out of these pop culture bets, which I think people have figured out in listening to the show for the past 3 years.
You are getting old.
Yeah. And I was never a pop culture maven in the first place. So so the average length of the national anthem at the Super Bowl is 1 minute 55, which informed a heated discussion, or a lengthy discussion, I should say, last year on the length of the national anthem. And I think we ended up concluding the wrong way. It ended up being a little bit longer, and I think we took the under. 2 minutes is still a long time. Like a 5-second overage is kind of difficult to hit. But I have no idea who these people are. So I wouldn't touch this bet. And I'm just going to take the under, not because it's the average, but because 2 minutes is actually somewhat difficult to hit. But yeah, obviously I wouldn't end up taking this because I've got no idea who these people are. But I did Google Eric Church, and I went to Google Images, and literally every single image is of him wearing sunglasses. I also intuited, based on the pictures, that he's probably a country singer. So it would make sense for him to take off the sunglasses to do something respectful during the national anthem. But it is way funnier to me if he wears sunglasses while singing the national anthem. And so I'm taking that one because it's plus 900 and it's also funny.
I mentioned casual football fan Rubes and the sucker bet about Tony Romo, and I kind of wonder if we are not the Rubes for this bet, because
we absolutely are.
I just plus 900 thing, and every single Google image of this guy, he's wearing sunglasses. But yeah, given the fact that he's a country singer, my suspicion is that he will not actually wear sunglasses. However, I will be putting half a unit on this because plus 900 is too good to pass up.
Yeah. So yeah, we're the suckers. We'll admit it, and we're putting money on it.
I'll be a sucker for a lot of things at plus 900.
Yeah.
Let's go into the halftime show with The Weeknd. The first song to be performed, this is where we get to test Arif's knowledge of pop culture again. Blinding Lights is 4-1. Heartless is 6-1. In Your Eyes, which is one I don't even recognize, is 7-1. And then Starboy is 15-2. Can't Feel My Face is 900 though.
So I have heard the first 4 songs you've listed, but I've just not listened to enough of The Weeknd for me to think of the tune for In Your Eyes. And it's in fact the other song that's In Your Eyes that's stuck in my head, the one from the 80s.
Peter Gabriel?
Phil Collins, right? Yeah, Peter Gabriel. Yeah, same guy.
That is most certainly not the same guy.
Same guy.
You cannot convince a woman to love you if you are standing on their on their front lawn with a boombox playing Phil Collins. That does not work.
All I have to do is throw on the Tarzan soundtrack, and I'm good.
No. It does not work like that. It has to be. No, that's not how any of this works.
Everybody doesn't get him into your Manhattan apartment and give him a glass of Chardonnay before you put on the Phil Collins.
Why do you have plastic sheeting everywhere, Reeve?
All right, Dexter, relax.
That's too bad.
I don't think it's going to be Blinding Lights. That's been the song that's been in all the commercials. I feel like that's going to be at like the crescendo of the show. I did kind of make this argument for whatever the first song was going to be last year. Who was it last year? Coldplay? I can't remember. This was like so long ago.
No, it was Jennifer Lopez and Shakira.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And And the bet for the first song was Hips Don't Lie, right?
Dusty says that like nothing of interest happened over the past year. Like 2020 wasn't
Dusty,
6 years long.
Yeah, last year was 6 years ago, dude.
And
Come on.
How could you forget about Shakira and Jennifer Lopez?
There was a moment during the season that I don't remember who played in the Super Bowl. Like, that's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Dusty. Anyway,
on Blinding Lights because that's the only song that ever plays anywhere. Like I try to listen to other music and it just plays Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. So
okay.
Play Tori Amos. Blinding Lights.
But yeah, I think we lost the bet because we were like, there's no way she opens with Hips Don't Lie. And she did.
I think I was pounding the table going, no, you people are idiots. This is going to end up being, it's going to be Hips Don't Lie. And then it happened and I was vindicated because I was right for the first time all year.
Well, all right. So what do you think it's going to be, James?
This year, I think they're going to start with Can't Feel My Face.
The one you don't know.
No, I know Can't Feel My Face. I don't know In Your Eyes.
Okay. God, it's still the Peter Gabriel song. So I'm going to have to look for the weekend to flush it out.
Maybe this ends up being like a mashup. Maybe Peter Gabriel comes out on stage too. Because
That would be amazing.
The next one is Oz to perform with The Weeknd. And what's not listed is Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel's not listed. We could take the field.
Exactly.
I think the field.
Crossing my fingers, hoping it's Peter Gabriel.
I was thinking for Oz to perform with The Weeknd, Daft Punk could be on there for Starboy, but I didn't see.
That would actually be great.
Yeah, that would have been
that's not on
interesting, but no, that's likely not going to end up happening.
Drake does seem super likely, but that's mostly a primacy effect. It was the first name I read. So I don't know if like my brain is just like, yeah, Drake will perform with anybody. Instead of me thinking, would The Weeknd perform with Drake? I think so, but I don't know if I like 4-1 odds on that.
And then you have to add in the question of whether or not Canadians are wanting to go to Florida at this particular moment.
Drake will go to Florida. The Miami Heat are in Florida. Drake will go to Florida.
I'm just saying, if you are nestled comfortably in Toronto, do you really want to be going to Florida this time of the COVID season?
The only time Drake ever cares about Toronto is when it's convenient to him. Like the Toronto Blue Jays or his battle with Meek Mill. It does not matter.
Jesus. I don't know why.
Or when he says he's from the 6. Like that's all that matters. I like Lana Del Rey 11-1 because that sounds super funny and is also 11-1. I don't like Future. I don't think that works. But yeah, I'll take a Lana Del Rey at plus 1100.
Yeah, I think I would go with Ariana Grande at plus 600. I think, I mean, these are obviously all people that are featured on his songs. And I don't know. I think she is like super famous, but not like.
That sounded so funny. I think she's like pretty famous.
She's super famous enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You kind of get what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Okay. No one else does, but I don't care.
If Ariana Grande does show up, does she wear cat ears?
That would be another one of those That would be another one of those Anthony Kiedis ones.
Yeah.
Let's get back to football here, and
let's get back to football. Let's talk about kicking. Sorry,
we already covered kicking, but
okay.
We can go to quarterback to throw the first interception. Mahomes is plus 120. Brady is minus 155.
Well, that makes sense given their like career or their interception rates over the past couple of years and in the playoffs. So Mahomes, interestingly, has had the highest number of dropped interceptions in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. So that's something to keep in mind, is that the number of interceptions that he's actually thrown does not represent his interception potential, as it were. That said, it's still the third lowest rate in the NFL when you include dropped interceptions. So it's still not very high. Brady's interception total is a little high because he has a number of interceptions bounce off the hands of his receivers. But Chris Godwin has lost all use of his hands during the playoffs, and he's still throwing to these friggin' running backs that don't know how to catch the ball. And at some point, I feel like there's going to be a lot of interception potential. Kansas City knows how to hold on to the ball. They've got a pretty good turnover rate on defense. If this is a bet that pays you back if no one throws an interception, then I would take Brady minus 155. But I could totally see that there not being an interception thrown in this one. But I would definitely take Brady minus 155. Mahomes plus 120 is just awful odds.
if the odds were better on Brady, if I could get minus 125 or better,
Yeah,
I would do it. But the way it's structured now, I would leave this one alone.
that's fair.
Next one. Either team to not punt, including overtime. No is a minus 1,115.
So no means that both teams punted?
That either team punted. You can bet 1 to 11 that there will be a punt.
Yes.
So if you would like to win $1 and potentially lose $10, you can bet that there will be a punt in the game. I never take bets like this.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So anybody punts, it pays out minus 1,115.
Yeah, what this is basically saying is that the Chiefs have such a good game that their punter doesn't even see the field at all. Like that's what they're trying to say with this prop.
But it's like a double negative, right?
It is, but the way this was designed,
especially with the word either.
Yeah, it's one of these teams not to punt. So
what is yes?
I actually didn't catch that on the prop bet page.
Yeah, so I would not. I mean, I would not take it because it seems to indicate that any punt that occurs. So I'm disagreeing with your interpretation, James. It seems to indicate that any punt that occurs pays out. No, doesn't pay out. Okay, I got it. Dusty, you explained it correctly. Got it. Yeah. Okay,
it pays out a minuscule amount.
It pays out a minuscule amount if a punt occurs. Got it. Okay, so you bet $11 to get $1 if a punt occurs. The other side of that is if no punts occur from either team, including overtime, I imagine yes is like enormous odds. I would not take either of those.
Be like not taking the 20, like the 20,000.
If it's 20,000, I might take it. But is it 20,000?
At that point, the Kevin rule comes into play.
Yeah, the Kevin rule has to. Yeah.
Let's do 2-point conversions before we do first touchdown.
Sure.
Will there be a 2-point conversion attempt? Yes is 230.
Attempt?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Both coaches are known for being aggressive, and yes is plus 230. So, yeah, I think so. If we're already kind of confident that a kicker is going to miss, / we're already invested in that outcome, why not also think that there might be a 2-point kick? Because coaches like to make up for extra points, even though it doesn't make sense. And I think Andy Reid has already indicated through his play that he'll start the 2-point conversion attempt stuff early when the analytics wizards say that you should do it. So, plus Bruce Arians, he likes to think that he's aggressive. Sometimes he's not in these situations. But I think that the score can end up being weird enough that some team will feel compelled to make a 2-point conversion attempt. Plus, the 2-point conversion plays are always like the special plays, and it's the Super Bowl, so you just kind of want to dial it up at some point. I think there's going to be a slight extra push just from that. And so, yeah, if it was even odds, I would not take it, obviously. But yes, plus 230, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, plus 200, I'm in.
So I'm going to leave you two alone to discuss the first player touchdowns. But right now, the best bet is, or the one that seems most obvious, is Travis Kelce for first touchdown plus 650, last touchdown also 650, or anytime is minus 163.
So the biggest issue with first touchdown is whether or not teams break out their like special plays early on. But luckily, the Chiefs' special plays very often involve Travis Kelce. So especially through that shovel pass stuff that he likes to do, which always gets teams. So that's a really good one. You're kind of SOL if it's a big play because though Kelce has a number of big plays, the big play touchdowns tend to go to Tyreek Hill or Mecole Hardman. But I do like Travis Kelce plus 650 for first touchdown. I don't like any of the Buccaneers, and the other Chiefs on the list that are possible for it are just not very high. I also kind of like Patrick Mahomes plus 1,600 for first touchdown.
I will be splitting one unit between Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. and then laughing all the way to the bank if one of them, if something crazy happens and, a big penalty or, a long drive that ends up just short. Because if that happens, if they get real close to the line, I think there's a pretty good chance that one of them ends up scoring the first touchdown. And for half a unit at plus 1,600 or plus 2,800, sure, why not? It's a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tom Brady, 4th and 1 sneak is famous. It's kind of what he does. And it seems like every single Super Bowl or every single like real big game of his, there's some 4th and 1 sneak that has to happen. So the odds of that happening to happen, like the first touchdown, it has happened in the Super Bowl. There's been enough exposure where that's happened. So
and the Buccaneers offensive line versus the Chiefs defensive line, which is how sneaks happen.
Yep.
Huge advantage for the Buccaneers. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of really everyone else from Tampa Bay I just don't trust. Like
I do like Tom Brady plus 400 anytime touchdown scorer too. That's really good.
Yeah, that's really good. There's just not a lot of otherwise. You got Antonio Brown on here. You got Mike Evans as a possibility. Leonard Fournette as first touchdown is plus 1,000.
That's funny and also bad odds. I would not take Leonard Fournette first.
What about
plus 10,000? Plus what?
Plus 10,000?
Yeah, I'll take the plus 10,000. Yeah.
The rule applies to Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, I think the Kevin rule applies to Leonard Fournette.
All right.
He has scored touchdowns, so
he's not allergic to it, despite the fact that you would think so with his hands not being able to like close around a ball for good portions of this year. But man, there's no one else on that team that really makes me think, okay, yeah, that's a good bet.
Yeah, right. If Mike Evans was slightly higher, I would take him. Chris Godwin, I feel like his odds are probably appropriate, but he's like the most, if I had hair, I would tear it out kind of guy because he just dropped so many passes in the end zone this year, especially during the playoffs and the latter half of the season, that it feels like he's just trying to screw you if you take it, and I don't want that in my life. So
we've done so much talking about the Tampa Bay players not getting first touchdown, and damn well that's going to end up happening now.
Well, very easily, a Tampa Bay player could be the first. Like the Tampa Bay could be the first to score a touchdown. That would not surprise me. It's so evenly distributed among them, right? That because like Godwin and Evans are both plus 1,000. Antonio Brown is plus 1,400. Gronkowski's plus 1,400. Ronald Jones is plus 1,400. Like it's so evenly distributed among them that it's just tough to figure out. Whereas like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, they're the leading touchdown scorers with the two teams combined. That makes sense.
Let's go. Either team to miss an extra point is we did that one for yes at plus 195.
Don't take that bet. Just turn off the show right now. You don't get to listen to the rest of it.
That one.
I mean, what are you doing? Yeah,
that one you kind of have to do as a listener of Norse Code. Largest lead of the game by other team. Over under is 16.5.
That's nuts. Because like if those are relatively even or minus 110, I'm still tempted just because the Chiefs happen to get behind a lot and then just make up for it.
Super slow starters.
Yeah, and they're super fun to watch when they're playing from behind. Well, they're super fun to watch whenever. But yeah, I mean, they're fun to watch from playing from behind, but they're not the Texans, right? They're not going to regularly get 16.5 points ahead. So I am crazy tempted to do this near even odds, but I wouldn't. I would take the under on this were I to bet on it. I wouldn't bet on it. But if it's anything plus 100 or something like plus 110 or better, I would take the over for sure.
Yeah, my floor would be like plus 110. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Everything you said is right.
I think it's also sort of the thing where like if the offense for Tampa Bay was this unstoppable juggernaut, then maybe I would feel a little bit more comfortable about the idea of them going up over 16.5.
Yeah, if it was the first half of the season, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the whole season, it'd be
a totally different story. Total number of players to attempt a pass.
I always take the over on this.
Yes,
because I'm a dummy. But it has paid out more often than not when I do take it. So I haven't taken it every single year, but I took it in the Eagles Patriots game, which clearly paid out. I took it in whatever game Julian Edelman finally threw a friggin' pass. It pays out a fair amount when New England's in there. Obviously, that's not happening now, but the Chiefs love these crazy plays, and Andy Reid's coming off of a bye, and you get the Chiefs have had 5 different pass attempt throwers. Obviously, like one of them is Chad Henne in relief of Patrick Mahomes, but it seems like they're fairly comfortable with this concept. Mecole Hardman has thrown it more than once, even. And then you get like the additional potential odds of Tampa Bay throwing a pass, which I mean they haven't had as many trick plays. I think Bruce Arians has done it in the past with the Cardinals. I don't remember, but they have had Blaine Gabbert throw some passes, which is funny. Blaine Gabbert also tweeted out, "Real gangsters move in silence," implying that he's had anything to do with what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done to get this far. He also quoted the lyric incorrectly, which is amazing to me.
The real thing here was just the amount of self-confidence it takes to claim that you had anything to do with the success.
Yeah, you need to have that in your life. That's the confidence you need to approach most of your endeavors with, which is why I imagine Dusty signed up for that reality show. So no member of the Buccaneers has attempted a pass that hasn't been a quarterback. But you do get just kind of those additional odds. But yeah, the Chiefs have had 5 different players throw passes for, or 5, including the punter. I said Mecole Hardman. No, it was Sammy Watkins. Travis Kelce has thrown 2. I think this could happen. It might sync up really nicely with Patrick Mahomes' anytime touchdown score too.
All it's going to take is one concussion check to have the over come in. And as much as I hate taking bets at minus 200, I might get on this one.
All right.
So the next one we have is longest touchdown, and the over-under for that is 45.5.
Yeah, I don't. So if this is at minus 110, I just don't like it. I think these two teams have a huge reputation for being big play teams, well-earned reputations for being big play teams. But I looked up all their touchdowns and which ones met the criteria here. So Kansas City has scored 53 touchdowns. Only 3 of them, this is the regular season, only 3 of them have been over 45 yards, over 45 yards. So that's 5.6% of them. Tampa Bay has had 58 touchdowns. Only 4 of them, a regular season, have been over, which 6.9%. Nice. But that's like a combined, if you average them out, 6.3%. The over-under on the total number of touchdowns at the game is 6.5. That implies 0.4 touchdowns over 45.5 yards. Now, are either of these defenses prone to giving up big plays? I honestly, aside from a stretch of play where, and I didn't look this up, I probably should have, but aside from a stretch of play where Jamel Dean was given a little bit too much responsibility, the Buccaneers haven't given up a ton of big play touchdowns. Neither are the Chiefs, so they don't seem particularly vulnerable. So I would take the under. I think this is an example of a sucker's bet where people know that these are big play teams, and so they just feel like, yeah, of course there's going to be a 45.5-yard touchdown, forgetting that most big plays aren't actually touchdowns. They're just like 50 yards and you go out at the 2 or something.
I'm trying to envision this scenario where Tyreek Hill ends up burning somebody for like 62 yards and ends up getting the touchdown as part of his MVP.
Just screwing us all in a bunch of different ways. Yeah.
Yep. It's just Tyreek Hill doing Tyreek Hill things.
So I had a couple of props that I kind of highlighted as I was doing some research for today. Let's be honest. My betting strategy, which has been very successful this year, is to be a break even plus like 1 or 2 unit winner, and then just take deposit bonuses, like maximum deposit bonuses, until the site realizes that I'm not just going to cough them all right back up and stops offering them to me. Having said that, I think, speaking of Tyreek Hill doing Tyreek Hill things, Boveda is offering plus 192 on a parlay where Tyreek Hill has 120 plus receiving yards and a touchdown, and Kansas City wins. And Hill's just been going off in the playoffs. He was averaging a touchdown a game during the regular season. He had 172 and 110 yards in his 2 playoff games this year. Should have had touchdowns. But I think this is, if one of these things happens, the other 2 are pretty likely to happen. So I would, throw a unit or 2 on that. over under for Tom Brady's passing yards is 300.5. And I would take the under on this. I think that's pretty easy money.
Yeah, I would take the under on that as well.
Minus 114 on Boveda. It's similar on like BetMGM. Tom Brady somehow managed to average 289 yards a game in the regular season. And I was like, how is that possible? And then I looked and I saw that he went for 2 like almost 400-yard games against the Falcons. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, great. Against the Falcons. I think of Falcons that were missing AJ Terrell, at least in one of those games too. So
yeah, a Falcons team that torched the Vikings badly.
If you want to hedge all the money that you're putting on Kansas City to win by 2.5, then Scotty Miller to score 1 touchdown and Tampa Bay to win is plus 700. And if Tampa Bay were to win, that would be a very Tampa Bay thing to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then the team to score first wins is plus 144 on Boveda. I picked no on this one because if Tampa Bay scores first, like looking back at the last few seasons, that basically guarantees a Kansas City victory.
Yes, I agree. That's a good one. I like that.
Will there be a wardrobe malfunction? Yes is plus 900.
Now, has there been a wardrobe malfunction since the wardrobe malfunction, which was what, 2005? Yeah, 2005 Super Bowl, 2006 actual year.
Yeah, and to be clear, this isn't during the game itself. This is during halftime, correct?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Per the rules that Congress established about wardrobe malfunctions, it only happens during the halftime show.
There's plenty of congressional testimony we can go through in order to point this out to your bookie.
If you're really, really thirsty for action, this would be a fun one. But an even more fun one for the desperate gamblers out there would be for the opening kickoff to be returned for a touchdown at plus 4,900.
Have any of the returners scored touchdowns this year? I know as a punt returner, Mecole Hardman did like a couple weeks ago, right? But I don't know.
Not from either of these teams, but at 50-1.
Oh, okay.
Put a dollar on it.
It's interesting because if Cordero Patterson was in this game, the odds would be skewed way too much in the other direction too. Like these people would just assume that Patterson would do it. And honestly, because it's fun, I would put money on it, which I did last year.
And how did that go? Don't answer that.
Yeah, kick return touchdowns have. Byron Pringle did one in the regular season this year, so that has happened. That's it though.
Do you guys have thoughts on the Gatorade color that will be dumped? Do you think are the Chiefs a solely orange Gatorade team?
I mean, no one has checked, right? So I don't know. I'm gonna say I don't have thoughts on it.
Well, orange is the favorite at plus 160. I will not be.
It always is.
I was gonna say orange tends to be the favorite on that one.
Yeah.
Even though it's only been orange once in the last 5 years.
What, you've got Gatorade stats?
Yeah, it was orange in 2020, blue in 2019, yellow in 2018 when the Eagles won, and none in 2017.
If it was orange last year, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And the Chiefs win again, you'd assume that what worked for them, like as sports teams tend to be superstitious.
Yep, this definitely turns into a superstitious situation.
Hence my question. Yeah. I mean, if you really believe the Chiefs are going to win, and you believe in Gatorade consistency, not like the liquid itself. But
I mean, it is pretty consistent as a liquid, but I can't imagine that impacts my bet.
Orange at plus 160 would be the way to go.
160? Yeah, okay, I'll take it. Fine. If the fact that the Chiefs had orange last year, yeah. If I were the Chiefs equipment manager, I would not screw around with that. Like, because even a suggestion from a player that it's because you switched to blue Gatorade this year, that would ruin me. I'd feel so bad.
Yep. It's not worth losing your job over.
Yeah.
No, especially after they fired that guy who painted the chefs in the end zone.
Yeah, right. They're a ruthless organization. Hope that equipment manager gets a Snickers.
Oh,
he needed one.
Needed one.
But yeah, that's all I got
That's good. Yeah. Put all your life savings into Orange. That's the official recommendation of this podcast, which is not a gambling podcast. Please do not listen to our advice.
Yes, please do not sue us for any sort of gambling losses. This is not a gambling. This is not a gambling website. This is an Arby's drive-through. I don't know why you're here. Yes.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about money, so why would you even use
only
money to gamble?
One of those wonderful states where you're allowed to do this online, and if you do that and you follow my advice, you will probably not lose every bet.
Yeah, we're actually just discussing the currency in the form of what do they use in Animal Crossing? Bells? Yes, we're yeah.
Units, bells, and Your Majesties.
That's right. It was Your Majesties.
Yeah.
I forgot that we used to do things in Your Majesties. Damn it. All right. Well, Dusty, thanks for staying on, and we'll get you back for the mailbag here in just a couple minutes. But before we hit the mailbag, we do have a few things to talk about, including a little bit of Vikings news. Ryan Ficken has been upgraded over to the he was an assistant, and now he appears to be in charge of the entire. What's the line?
He was promoted, I think, is the actual word that people use.
No, you are not. You are not just a clown. You are the entire circus. Ryan Ficken is now the special teams coordinator for the Vikings, which has confounded a few people who tend to think that the entirety of that staff is to blame for all of the woes. I mean, are they wrong?
No, okay, so Ryan Ficken has been the assistant special teams coordinator for a while. I remember it was pretty interesting in a game against Dallas that Mike Zimmer was unable to go to because of his eye. They promoted Mike Prefer to head coach for that game, or interim head coach for the game. And so a lot of people were like, oh, well, then Ryan Ficken, the assistant special teams coordinator, will then be coaching the special teams in that game. And that was not the case. I think that they hired someone to do it instead of him. And that was very weird. So I didn't think it was necessarily the case that he was going to end up becoming the special teams coordinator after they allowed Marlon Maloof's contract to expire. But I guess it makes sense. But he has been with the Vikings for a while. And in some of those years, their special teams have been quite good. So I kind of get it. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. They also hired Josh Hinks, who I believe was last with the Eagles. I don't know and he is a strength and conditioning coach. And I don't know much about him except that I never know anything about any of the strength and conditioning coaches. Mark Uyeyama, who's the previous strength and conditioning coach, his contract expired and they did not renew it. I guess there was a spate of Vikings injuries this year. I don't know if I would blame the strength and conditioning staff the same way that when there was a bunch of pectoral tears, that it made kind of a lot of sense to
during
blame
a
that
normal
coach.
Season.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But and this year the injuries were Daniil Hunter, he had a slip disc. Is that on the strength and conditioning coach? Maybe, but I think that's unlikely, right? But yeah, sure. There were a lot of injuries this year. Fine, whatever. You get this guy from the Eagles, famously healthy Eagles. I don't know that fixes that problem.
Yes,
but
yes, the famously healthy. Michael Kist has nothing but positive things to say.
Right? Yeah. He was the director of sports nutrition at Nebraska. He's a registered dietitian, so nutrition is going to probably play a pretty big role. He also directed body composition analysis at Nebraska, which sounds fancy. I bet it's not. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be in charge of coordinating menus as well as designing the exercises and stuff like that. I don't know. Watching interviews with Mark Uyeyama last year, there was a lot of emphasis on how he's kind of science forward and analytically minded, and that was kind of interesting. Obviously, did not work out to mean anything. So yeah, I don't know anything about this guy. The program that he's coming from, the Eagles, not crazy healthy, but you never know how much you can blame the strength and conditioning coach for that. So. Yeah, that's what I know about that. Also, Keenan McCardell, they haven't announced it yet, but the rumor is that he's going to be hired as the wide receivers coach. I think a lot of people were kind of interested in him a while ago because he was Stephon Diggs' coach at Maryland, a program that also produced DJ Moore. And I don't know if the Stephon Diggs thing recommends him all that well by itself, just because he was a 5-star recruit that decided to stay at home. Yeah, I mean, not every 5-star recruit turns into like a first round pick, and he was a 5th round pick. So even that might even recommend against him. But I think a lot of people would say, I think Diggs included, that McCardell was a big part of his development at Maryland, and that's great. But what's interesting is that he was last the receivers coach at the Jaguars, where he's making essentially a lateral move for the Vikings, who have moved their wide receivers coach to something, right? I don't know all the moves yet, but like the idea is that without an offensive coordinator, the Vikings have the ability to kind of move some people around. Their wide receivers coach right now is Andrew Janocko, after being an assistant offensive line coach for the past couple of years. I don't know if they're going to move Janocko up to quarterback coach, and then they move Clint Kubiak to offensive coordinator, but they have to resolve the offensive coordinator thing before they announce any of that, which is why I think they haven't announced the Keenan McCardell move. So I think that with all of this movement, that it is very likely that Clint Kubiak becomes the offensive coordinator, but the Rooney Rule now applies to coordinator level positions, which is not, I would say, not the reason the Vikings are interviewing Tyke Tolbert.
Yes.
Yeah. To be their offensive coordinator. In fact, he as an interview makes a ton of sense for a couple of reasons I'll get into. But back to Keenan McCardell, I think that the Jaguars have overperformed when it comes to coaching and selecting wide receivers. Like, I think looking at their statistics, that maybe it doesn't feel like that, but you got to remember that it was like Gardner Minshew throwing to them. And so, you take a look at players like DJ Chark, you take a look even at the rookie that they had this year, the do-everything guy whose name I forget now, whose name was pronounced kind of funny. I can't remember. But yeah, I kind of like how the Jaguars receiving group has looked over the past couple of years when he's been the coach. Oh, Keelan Cole is also a name that I think is, he was an undrafted free agent that's performed really well for them. But yeah, Laviska Shenault, that's it. And it looks like it should be pronounced Shenault. But yeah, they've had some receivers that I feel like have kind of performed beyond their level. Even Chris Conley, when they grabbed him from the Chiefs, has overperformed what he did with the Chiefs. Colin Johnson has done really well as a 5th round pick. He's had 272 yards this year, including some pretty embarrassing moments against the Vikings. So I actually like this move because he has a fairly somewhat strong history at Maryland. I would argue that his history in Jacksonville has been pretty good, and that's been over the past 3 years. Yeah, I mean, not that the receiving coaching has needed a huge amount of work in Minnesota over the past couple of years, but it's good to have. And also, D.D. Westbrook, who's performed pretty well. So yeah, I kind of like that move. But yeah, this potentially shuffles some people around, and I think that the expectation is that Janocko either co-coaches at wide receiver, which would be kind of weird, or moves to quarterback coach and Clint Kubiak moves up. But they do need to interview out of building, and they interviewed Tyke Tolbert. And I think that this is a pretty good interview. I don't think it is simply a Rooney Rule interview. He is a wide receivers coach for the Giants, which, when you take a look at the wide receivers, that doesn't feel great. But for the most part, his experience has been with Gary Kubiak in Denver. He's been on a Super Bowl winning team with Kubiak, and he's familiar with the system. He's also familiar with the Shermer system that was, at least for the Vikings, successful with Case Keenum. And he's familiar with a bunch of different offensive terminology. This would allow the Vikings to kind of keep the same language, which I think a lot of people were concerned with. But I think it is more likely than not that while this interview I don't think is necessarily perfunctory, it might be a genuine interview. The favorite in the clubhouse is probably the person in the clubhouse, Clint Kubiak. And that allows Keenan McCardell to go to wide receivers. That allows Janocko to move to quarterbacks coach. And that allows the Vikings to maintain the same system throughout with the same language. And people are very familiar with everything that's going on. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. I think that's every coaching move. I don't know. If it's not, email us and we'll ignore it.
Sounds about right. The next thing that I want to mention is the big news over the weekend with Matt Stafford being traded from the Lions over to the Rams, which not a lot of people saw coming, for Jared Goff and a boatload of picks. It does appear that no one hates drafting more in the first round than the LA Rams. This will include, I believe, years 5, 6, and 7 that they will not be picking in the first round. It's just impressive. But the thing about this trade is the thing I've noticed, and I don't think it's getting nearly enough play. People are just talking are saying it aloud without thinking about what they're saying. Every analysis of this trade, from Matthew Stafford's play to accepting Jared Goff to even the picks that are involved, everything seems to be this like backhanded compliment to Detroit. Or like everything like has this like anti-Detroit thing on it. Like, yeah, Detroit fleeced them, but what are they going to do with the picks? Like,
right. Yeah.
Like Matt Stafford, great quarterback, but we don't really know how good he is because he's got all these garbage time yards. He's got all this, he's a fourth quarter warrior because people are always playing in, prevent by that point. They're just trying to like minimize the thing. Like, yeah, you can throw over the top from us, but.
Right. That's kind of interesting. So there's a couple of elements at play here. Obviously, that Goff was a throw-in for a pair of first-round picks, which, mind you, are in the 20s. It's not the same as like the 8th overall pick, which it was rumored the Panthers were willing to offer, and the Lions turned that down for a pair of first-round picks in the 20s plus Jared Goff. I would imagine the Lions would also acquire Teddy Bridgewater, so thanks for keeping him out of the division. Is Teddy Bridgewater under contract? I have no idea. But yeah, so 2 first-round picks, probably. We don't know what the next first-round pick is going to be. It could be anywhere. But presumably, if Matthew Stafford's as good as the Lions and the Rams both think he is, then they would probably be picking in the 20s. So 2 first-round picks in the 20s, plus Jared Goff, plus some other stuff, like a third-round pick as well? I don't know. Do you have the...
It was a third-rounder, yeah.
Yeah. So just straight up for Matthew Stafford, which implies, I think, probably that Jared Goff is, if Matthew Stafford is worth probably 2 first-round picks in the middle of the first round, like 2 15th overall picks, then he would have to be worth more than that, right? Because Jared Goff, if you traded him at his current contract, given his level of performance over the last 2 years, excluding the games where he was playing with a broken thumb, I would imagine he goes for a late first. So is Matthew Stafford worth 3 first-round picks? If he is, maybe we have to reevaluate how much Kirk Cousins is worth. But if Goff is not worth that much, maybe we have to figure out kind of why we think Goff is worth only a late first-round pick. So it's difficult because the more you say Matthew Stafford is worth, the more you have to assume Jared Goff is worth, the more it's kind of weird that he got turned into a throw-in. There were rumors that 2 teams were attempting to trade for Jared Goff, so it's not like he was an unwanted quantity. But yeah, and this is all complicated by other quarterbacks that have done well. So Sam Bradford traded for a first-round pick. Carson Palmer traded for a first-round pick. Those are interesting situations because teams either traded midseason or immediately before the season. But yeah, let's assume that Jared Goff is worth a late first, so like 30 or something like that. So then the Rams functionally traded 3 1s and a 3 for Matthew Stafford, which means that quarterbacks can range from, let's say that Matthew Stafford's a top 8 quarterback, which I think is the optimistic argument, right? I don't think you can make an optimistic argument even for him to be a top 5 quarterback. But let's say he's a top 8 quarterback, which I think is optimistic. He's got a lot of physical talent, and he's still fairly young for a guy with as many years under his belt. If he's worth 3, but Jared Goff is only worth 1, and he's at the kind of maybe, I guess, a bottom 3rd quarterback, but that's kind of a weird thing to say too, right? Because of how efficient those offenses have been. But if let's say he's a top 24 quarterback, I guess, and that's worth a late first, that's your range of quarterbacks. Well, now we don't know how much Deshaun Watson is worth, but then Kirk Cousins is somewhere in between that, between 3 first-round picks and 1 first-round pick, because I think a lot of people, even with the Cousins contract, and remember the Goff contract is part of the reason he'd be worth less, even with the Cousins contract, which is structured very weirdly, and you end up having to guarantee that year that's not guaranteed yet, I think that justifies the valuation that we put on earlier in the year that he's about a first-round pick, maybe even more. So everything is fascinating about this. What this ultimately means is that Cousins is almost certainly the second best quarterback in the division, depending on, I mean, the Bears have a first round pick this year, right? So, however the Bears screw that up.
So far, they have a first round pick. They haven't
Right,
traded it to anyone for anything yet.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I assume that the Lions won't have an opportunity, given how late their pick is, to pick a quarterback. Maybe we can assume the same is true of the Bears. In that case, the Vikings almost certainly have the second best quarterback. I guess it really depends on how Jared Goff improves, but I think the presumption going in is that they now have the second best quarterback in the division. Matthew Stafford is now traded to a division where he is fighting to be the third best quarterback, right? Because you've got Kyler Murray, you've got obviously there's Jimmy Garoppolo for now, and you've got Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson number one. Kyler Murray might be number two. He tailed off for the second half of the season, so you might say that Matthew Stafford could be fighting for second. But if the 49ers use Jimmy Garoppolo to trade up in the draft, or if they trade for a quarterback or whatever, then you end up in a really weird situation. And there's been rumors that they might trade for Deshaun Watson, in which case, then Matthew Stafford is competing with Kyler Murray to be the third best quarterback. Right now, he might be the second best quarterback in the NFC West. That's going to be kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, the point is that the Rams have really good defense that doesn't tend to last very long unless, your head coach is a defensive head coach, which theirs is not. They just lost their defensive coordinator. I kind of like the move for the Rams just because it's really aggressive, and it'd be kind of cool if Stafford won a ring as well. And that's a great team. They obviously have to make some decisions about the receivers hitting free agency, but because I think both Kupp and Josh Reynolds are hitting free agency, I want to say. I'm going to look that up real quick, but
what's interesting with this is that this just seems, on paper, it really does seem like a large number of picks for someone who was never the best quarterback in the division that he played in at the time.
Yeah, no, that, yeah. Oh, and Cooper Kupp just signed a new deal, so he's going to be with the team. Great. Yeah, so
It has one of those feels like I mentioned before, the Brock Osweiler trade. Like it has elements of it. Like it appears just to have on paper like be like an NBA trade, where there's just like a lot of there's a contract involved that's bloated and everybody knows it's bloated, but they're just going to end up having to take it on.
Yeah, and that certainly seems to be what the deal with Jared Goff is. And if that's the case, Brock Osweiler was worth a second. Jared Goff, I think, is obviously better, but also has an owner's contract. So, yeah, I guess as a late first, that kind of makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think it kind of reminds you of that. Let's take a look at the PFF grade for Matthew Stafford, who was really great last year for those 8 games. Okay, well, I should have a minimum drop back here. Otherwise, Taylor Heineke ends up showing out really well. Matthew Stafford is ranked 13th, just below Kyler Murray. Would you trade 3 firsts for the 13th best quarterback in the NFL?
Here's the thing, is that a couple of years ago, we all made fun of the Lions for the terrible contract that they end up giving Matt Stafford. And as years have gone on, that contract's not as bad anymore.
Yeah, that's true. It's actually a pretty decent contract to absorb. Plus, I mean, the Rams have all kinds of cap issues, which is maybe another reason that you'd want to take this contract on. But I think they do think that they're getting a substantial upgrade in quarterback. And I think most people agree, despite the analytics not quite being there, because they have very similar completion percentage over expected, very similar EPA, actually fairly similar PFF grades over the past 4 years. Stafford's has been better over the past 2 years, but that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, so last year Stafford was 7th in PFF grade. He was probably like 2nd in adjusted 8 yards per attempt. And this year he was 13th. So, okay, yeah, so top 8 maybe. Derek Carr ranks 9th here. So I wouldn't say that these PFF grades are going to be determinative going forward. But yeah, I find that kind of fascinating that you're definitely not getting a top 5 quarterback, but you're trading 3 firsts, which is, I believe, what the Rams traded for to get Jared Goff, or
the Rams did end up giving up.
It's what Washington traded for to get Robert Griffin to the Rams.
Yeah. So, but looking at all of this, it's people have made comparisons like, well, if Matthew Stafford is worth this, then what is Deshaun Watson going to end up being worth? And I don't know if that's necessarily the argument you should be having.
I don't think this really changes Watson's worth because first they're late-ish picks. Second, he was always going to go for a ton. Like I think you need to throw in a high-value player plus 3 firsts. Like I don't think that changed. 3 good firsts.
Yeah, the only way that this trade ends up happening with the Texans, for me, this looks more and more like holdout. Like it looks more and more like the Carson Palmer situation.
Yeah,
which sucks, but otherwise you're going to end up in a situation with like, okay, well, here's the Herschel Walker trade 2.0 with all of our picks, and while I would love for Chicago to just fleece out their entire future again,
finally get the quarterback they should have drafted in the first place.
Exactly, that they traded up to avoid. You know, while it would be nice to watch Chicago just shoot themselves so beautifully in the foot, at some point, it just becomes a situation. It's too rich. You can't do that.
Yeah, I don't know if 3 firsts and a good player is that point though. Like Deshaun Watson might be a top 3 quarterback next year. Like it's easily in the cards. He's 3rd in PFF grade. And he's always been kind of up there.
Even if you're not going to go top 3, you could easily go top 5.
Yeah, and I think top 5 is likely where you end up. It's going to be like him, Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, and maybe Wilson, right? And Russell Wilson, and that's it. Obviously, Tom Brady could be in that conversation. Maybe someone else pulls themselves into that conversation. If Ryan Tannehill has another good year, you kind of have to begrudgingly say, well, maybe he's got something.
Josh Allen somehow repeats his performance from this year.
Yeah. And I think based off of Josh Allen's play, that there's a good likelihood of that because it was mostly sustainable stuff that he was doing, which is really nice. But yeah, and maybe Brady sustains it for another year. But if you get somebody who's in the conversation to be top 5, even top 3, then I mean that's invaluable, right? Like the Chiefs parked $500 million in Patrick Mahomes' lawn. $500 million. Anybody would give up basically their entire franchise to have that opportunity to give him $500 million. Now, obviously, there is a gap between Mahomes and Watson, but I think it's smaller than a lot of people say, or a lot of people think. And I think a lot of NFL teams think that as well. Watson is quite good. So the minimum is 3 and a really good player. And if that really good player is someone like Khalil Mack, that's 5 first-round picks, right? Because Khalil Mack was traded for 2 first-round picks. That's 5 first-round picks, and you had to do that by getting rid of your best defensive player. That might be what it takes, and I think it would make the Chicago Bears a lot better because that team got a couple of wins with Mitch Trubisky and the other guy that can throw left. What is his name? Mike Glennon.
I thought you were talking about Nick Foles.
Nick Foles, that's it. It was Mike Glennon last year. Yeah, good Lord.
That's the sort of
to
thing.
Allen Robinson. Can you imagine?
the idea basically goes back to the Detroit thing of we don't actually, we don't know Stafford's peak because he's been stuck in Detroit on these terrible teams. We don't know Deshaun Watson's peak because all of his targets were traded away for peanuts by Bill O'Brien.
Right. Yeah. And if he was like a top 5, top 3 quarterback this year without Hopkins, he's throwing to Will Fuller skeleton, right? And Kiki Cutie in some games, like a 5th wide receiver on the roster. Like Jesus, man. He threw for 9 yards an attempt to nobody.
Yeah,
to Jordan Akins.
The XFL All-Stars are appearing in that backfield right now, and he was doing quite well for himself.
Right, yeah. So, and I don't want to oversell how bad that Houston receiving core is. I mean, they had some players. Will Fuller isn't bad. He also wasn't healthy the entire year, as he has never been.
I believe the ghost of Randall Cobb was out there as well.
Yeah, you had Randall Cobb and his retirement plan. You had Brandon Cooks, who is fine, right? He's been traded for first-round picks multiple times. But yeah, it's
he's
Will
used
Fuller.
to that sort of thing.
Right, yeah. It's Will Fuller, Jordan Akins, he had as many targets to Randall Cobb as he did David Johnson, I guess, Kiki QT, and Darren Fells. Like, Jesus Christ. And Duke Johnson. Right. So, like, I mean, he's throwing to, like, maybe not the worst receiving core in the league by any reasonable stretch. I mean, obviously, that's probably the Eagles. But he's throwing to, like, a below average receiving core, right? Like, you take the Jaguars receiving core over that with Keelan Cole and DJ Chark and whatever. And, I don't... He's got the ability to unlock a lot. If you give him Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson and probably another receiver drafted in the third round because they won't have any picks in the first two rounds because they're trading for him, that's frightening. I think the Bears are the favorite in that division, even without Khalil Mack. Like, I think that they've got, like, Robert Quinn and whoever at edge rusher. And they've got Akeem Hicks at defensive tackle. They've got that really great secondary with Kyle Fuller and Jalen Johnson and Buster Screen and a pair of pretty good safeties, Eddie Jackson and the other one, Clinton Dix, I think. They've got all those guys. Yeah, Khalil Mack is a great piece. There's no question that he's a big part of why that defense is good. But I think that your defense is good enough that with a good enough defensive coordinator, you're pushing for top 7, top 5. And maybe you draft a pretty good edge rusher too. Not that there are many in this draft. And now you've got an offense that, the offensive line could do some work. It's been getting better over the course of the season, but he's throwing to Allen Robinson. That's DeAndre Hopkins. That's who he's throwing to, right? Like, Hopkins is a bit better of a route runner, but Allen Robinson is so good. He ended up becoming one of my top 6 receivers this year, despite Mitch Trubisky throwing to him. So that's great. And Darnell Mooney is a really, really fun receiver too. So there's a lot that he could do there. I think the Bears are maybe not favorites, but they could push to be division winners as soon as that happens, despite not having first-round picks for 3 years and not having Khalil Mack. So, I would imagine that the Watson price is something like 5 first-round picks, but you'd have to concentrate it in players, right? Like some player would have to be worth a first or 2 firsts or something, and you have to trade that away. And that makes sense to me. That's that conversation, I think.
Yeah, and just so we can say that we covered it, there have been rumors about Kirk Cousins in San Francisco that haven't been really substantiated in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of been a reiteration that Shanahan likes Kirk Cousins. It's the same thing that we heard last year. Is there any reason to think that this year will be different than last as far as a trade out of the Kirk Cousins contract?
I'll address that in a second. I did want to add the Barnwell trade from a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, with Cousins. The Vikings sent Cousins and some picks and received Washington. There's a third team involved. It's the Patriots with Jarrett Stidham. But the Vikings end up giving up the 14th pick, the 90th pick, their first-round pick next year, their first-round pick the year after that, and Kirk Cousins. So 4 first-round picks and a third-round pick. So that's pretty close to the 5. Unless Kirk Cousins is worth a little bit more, which after the Goff trade, maybe he is. So that might be the case, right? Where you've got 3 first-round picks plus a player and another pick to make up the difference. So that does actually kind of fit. And they get Deshaun Watson back. So there's that. Okay, so Shanahan likes Kirk Cousins. That got leaked again. Like you said, it got leaked last year. I believe the leak also includes them potentially wanting to explore that trade. I don't know, or I don't think that leak includes them having actually explored it yet. So we don't even know if they've contacted the Vikings. And importantly, we have no idea if the Vikings are even picking up the phone. So this rumor is very one-sided. It might just be a preference. It might be something that they want to explore, but we have no idea how much the Vikings would like to explore it. I've seen rumors from even less credible sources that say a couple of other things. I don't want to even entertain them. So that's something to think about. How much would the Vikings want to entertain this? Well, we can use that Barnwell article to maybe even get an idea of what this looks like. Unfortunately, it's a 4-team trade, and the 49ers send stuff to get Aaron Rodgers, not Deshaun Watson. But yeah, so they give up the 12th overall pick, so it's slightly better than what the Vikings have. A first-round pick next year, a second round pick next year, and Jimmy Garoppolo in order to receive Aaron Rodgers, who I believe, just because of his age, is worth a little bit less than Deshaun Watson, despite the fact that Rodgers was probably the better player, but maybe it's close. So in that scenario, you end up giving 2 first-round picks and a second and Jimmy for a quarterback that is probably worth a little bit less, but let's say is worth 4 first-round picks instead of 5, plus a third, right? In that case, if that's the valuation, right, and you've got the first-round pick you're sending this year is very similar to the one the Vikings were sending, and they're only giving up, 2 first-round picks and a second instead of the Vikings' third, then Jimmy Garoppolo, in theory, is worth more than Kirk Cousins in this trade, and that doesn't make sense to me. I think that most people would argue, and I found out today after commenting on Will Regitz's tweet about a potential Jimmy Kirk trade. I commented today that I'm surprised that there are people who actually think that Jimmy Garoppolo is the better quarterback, but you ask a bunch of 49ers fans, and evidently that seems to be the consensus there. That strikes me as strange. Garoppolo is clearly a more limited quarterback. All of the stuff that, and I think Luke Braun actually said this, but this is stuff that I've thought too. All of the stuff that people say about Kirk Cousins that isn't true is probably true about Jimmy Garoppolo. So, for example, Kirk Cousins is an aggressive deep ball thrower, has been at least over the past 2 years. You know who isn't? Jimmy Garoppolo. He actually does not throw the ball deep all that often. If we actually take a look at deep ball passing percentage this year, first of all, Jared Goff is near the bottom, so that's kind of funny. But Garoppolo, hold on, he doesn't even show up because he didn't do it this year. So let's take a look at 2019. Garoppolo last year was dead last behind Drew Brees and Jared Goff. So the bottom 3, so 34, 35, 36. 34 is Jared Goff at 8.9%. 35th is Drew Brees at 8.2%. 36th is Jimmy Garoppolo at 6.5. So there's a 2 percentage point gap there between 36th and 35th. That's where he lives. He is the least aggressive downfield passer in the NFL. So that is what people think Kirk Cousins is. And of course, if we take a look at Cousins last year, you end up with where is Cousins? Yeah, so he was tied with Lamar Jackson at 9th at 13.7%. Which I believe is more aggressive than this year, but it wasn't unaggressive. Yeah, 12.6% this year, tied with Josh Allen at 12th. So names that we typically associate with being deep ball passers, tied with Kirk Cousins. So if we take a look at aggressiveness in tight windows, which is something that Next Gen Stats has, Kirk Cousins is not unaggressive again. So last year he was at 13%, which is in the lower half, but Jimmy Garoppolo, he's a little bit more aggressive at 15%. So in terms of tight windows, I guess they seem to be a little bit more willing to throw the ball. This is also not a super stable statistic. So Cousins, for example, jumped up to 16%, which is in the top half this year. But yeah, Garoppolo just does not throw the ball down the field, despite having a very play action heavy game and having one of the rare deep threat tight ends that exists in the league in George Kittle. Would have been nice to see him with a receiving core that was willing to go a little bit deep, but I mean, you still have Marquise Goodwin last year. It would have been nice to see what Brandon Ayuk and Jimmy Garoppolo would have done this year, but Brandon Ayuk had the lowest depth of target of any receiver in the NFL this year, so you probably wouldn't have gotten that. You would have gotten a bunch of screen passes like you did for him. He led the league in yards after the catch because he kept on catching the ball at like the 0-yard mark. So yeah, that's who Jimmy Garoppolo is. He's going to remind a lot of people of Sam Bradford, and he is what a lot of people think Kirk Cousins is. He doesn't have a ton of situational awareness. I don't think his third down conversion percentage is all that great. I don't think he's all that great in 2-minute scenarios. And he is even more reliant on play action to turn into a good passing game than Cousins is. His performance under pressure is about as worrisome as it is for Cousins, which is overrated for Cousins, and it is a little overrated for Garoppolo. I think that their struggles under pressure are overstated by critics, but it's still a concern. Yeah, he's a very paint by numbers quarterback, which is why I have called Jimmy Garoppolo Hot Kirk over the past couple of years, because he's very handsome, but he plays like Kirk Cousins and not as well. But yeah, so all of that in mind, I think the league thinks that Garoppolo is just not as good as Cousins. So in that case, the Vikings would be receiving picks in that scenario. I don't know if they would receive the 12th overall pick, but if we use the Stafford Goff trade to calibrate an understanding of Cousins, I think we continue to arrive at the idea that he's worth a mid first, which is what the 49ers have. If the Vikings traded away Cousins to the 49ers and they traded Garoppolo back, the cap hits are like not the same, but they probably benefit the Vikings down the road, but this year is probably not too big a deal. I could look that up, but I'm very lazy. You probably require them to give up some pretty significant stuff. Either a second and a third, which I think would make Vikings fans annoyed, but you do get Garoppolo, or like a first round pick next year. I think is probably what you end up with if you also add Garoppolo to the equation, because he is probably worth a second round pick, a high second round pick. Like, is he better than Goff? I think with this contract, a little bit. So maybe I guess a late first round pick, but certainly not enough to make up the difference to a mid first round pick, which is where I am potentially valuing Cousins. So probably a second and a third or a first round pick next year to make up that difference. That is probably what that looks like. I don't know that the Vikings want to do it because the Vikings seem pretty committed to the idea, even now, that they've got a Super Bowl window and they just have to be a little bit better on defense. So I don't think that they're going to downgrade a quarterback, which is what this would be. But it would be interesting. I would love to write about it, but yeah, I don't know if that's great.
So let's get into the mailbag. And the first question is about this potential thing. He says, you know what, F it. Everyone says to trade Kirk to the 49ers, but what does that look like from the Vikings side? What does a Garoppolo-led Vikings offense look like? Or do they really just package any picks into a rookie quarterback?
Well, it looks like what people describe what they think the Cousins offense looks like, which is a bunch of short yards after the catch passes, which, hey, Thielen's good at yards after the catch. Jefferson's good at yards after the catch. That kind of doesn't matter because it's still better to get yards before the catch. At least statistically speaking, you tend to get more yards if you've got a deeper passing offense, especially when you pair it with a play action game. That said, if Shanahan really loves Cousins as much as it seems like from these leaks, maybe they do give the 12th pick in addition to Garoppolo for Cousins, in which case the Vikings have the 12th pick and the 14th pick, and they might be able to package those together to trade up for a rookie quarterback. That would, I think, be a really phenomenal rebuild. And then I think a lot of teams would not want to trade away Kyle Rudolph because you want to have some veterans in the building to help your quarterback out. But I think if you're rebuilding, it would be great to trade Kyle Rudolph, maybe for a third or a fourth, maybe a fourth. And then you could attempt to offload Anthony Barr also for a fourth. Now you're filled to the brim with picks to surround your rookie quarterback with, even though you traded away or you traded down with Unique Ngakoue from the second to the third. This is a pretty good receiver draft, just like last year. Well, last year was even better, I think. This is a pretty good receiver draft. You add another receiver, maybe you add another tight end, but people are pretty high on Irv Smith, and we saw how good Tyler Conklin was when Kyle Rudolph was injured. Great. Kyle Rudolph seems to want to get out, which might make a trade a little bit easier from the Vikings' perspective. Fantastic. That would be a really exciting rebuild. You do have some younger players on defense, but you still have some mainstays, right? You kind of have to figure out what you want to do with Harrison Smith, whatever. But if that happens, and if Shanahan really does value Cousins that much, that he'd be willing to give up Garoppolo plus the 12th overall pick, the Vikings could trade up for whoever the fourth quarterback in the draft is. Zach Wilson? I don't know, man. Justin Fields? Sure. I don't care. Sounds like a lot of fun.
I think I think most people are having Trey Lance as their number 4.
Sounds like a safety. Don't know who that is, but that would be pretty exciting. And you'd have a competition year one, and Garoppolo is probably the quarterback in the same way that Castle was the quarterback before Teddy took over because of a Castle injury. That I think is an interesting scenario for the Vikings. And now they don't have the Cousins contract to deal with. The Garoppolo contract lets you get out of it, I think, from here on out, because the 49ers have to kind of take that on. And there's not as much dead space for Cousins because you're not paying him the roster guarantee for 2022. You do have some dead space, obviously, this year. But the Garoppolo contract is not difficult to get out of for the Vikings, unless I was looking at the Goff. Let me double check that to make sure I'm not an idiot. I mean, I am, but about this specifically.
Yeah, just making sure that you're not, this is at least being recorded. Recorded idiocy is far worse than just idiocy at home.
Yeah. It's super easy to get out of. The dead cap, if you cut him in 2021, is 2.8 million, and you wouldn't cut him this year or the following season. The dead cap in 2022, which is the last year of his contract, is 1.4 million. Crazy easy to get out of. You have a cap savings of 25.6 million. So yeah, super easy to get out of the contract. Plus, he's only under contract for 2 more years. So fantastic. That would be a ton of fun. It would clearly mean the Vikings are in rebuild mode. But given how young that defense is going to have to be, I mean, with all the corners are young, obviously you have to figure out what you want to do with Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks. But, you could have a competition at linebacker if you trade away Anthony Barr. Your edge rushers are going to be young. Your tackles are going to be young. I think that you could create a new window that way. I think you don't have to commit to this idea that the Vikings have a window, but I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, if the premise of the mailbag is correct, what could that look like? It could look like that, but only in that scenario where like you get a pair of first round picks to package up. If not, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo. It's going to be a ball control offense. It's going to be very annoying to watch. It's going to be very similar to what Vikings fans have been used to over the past several years before Cousins.
Damian Barrett asks, I'm currently 1 point behind on a football pick'em competition going into the final week. Obviously, if they pick the winner, it's over, and logic would dictate that they would go with the Chiefs. How do I get into their head to make them pick Tampa?
I mean, who's a bigger Super Bowl winner than Tom Brady? Isn't Bruce Arians due? Just ask some questions.
Is it took a team to the Super Bowl? Like, what do you think he's going to do after that?
What, is Eli Manning on the other side of the ball? He hasn't lost to anybody else.
And what pick'em league goes all the way to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, no, that was what I was asking before the show. That's nuts, man.
I hope you win like $100,000.
Yeah, but also if you lose, you deserve it for being in a pick'em league that goes all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was in a eliminator league. They used to call them suicide leagues, I guess. And I got all the way to week 15, and it was a 3-way tie. And I was considering contacting the other players and just kind of cashing out, and I didn't, and I lost week 15. $800, man. Not a ton of money, but like
enough.
Yeah, enough.
Yeah, enough. Not a small amount of money either.
You were playing it at a time when $800 would have really, really meant something.
Yeah, it would have been a whole stimulus.
Yeah, exactly. I got a Bill Botke question here. Bill Botke asks, Mac Jones' stock has gone up since the national championship game and Senior Bowl week. Some draft experts are now talking about him being a top 15 pick, though previously he was only considered a top 50 pick. This seems like a great example of recency bias. Is his big jump warranted, or is he simply clickbait for Vikings fans? Thanks for the great podcast.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. My intuition is to say that that's the case. But yeah, if we take a look at whether or not Benjamin Robinson has tweeted about Mac Jones on January 25th, he tweeted out the mock draft thing. So in October, the estimated mock draft position for Mac Jones is at the top of the second round. So like you said, top 50 pick. But by the end of December, so by the end of the regular season for the college bowl season, or the college regular season, he was around pick 31 or 30. And then he dropped back off again up until like January, right? And he was a top 50 pick. And then after early January, he ended up rising up in the mocks. And now he is in probably pick 19 range. That said, his pick range has expanded pretty substantially too. So after the regular season, his pick range never really got above 16. And so at the upper end, and at the lower end, obviously he got picked all the way around like 64 or something like that, right? But at the upper end, it never got up to 16. As at the end of the regular season. Now you throw in January and you put in all that college championship performance and the playoff performance, his pick range goes all the way up to like 8. I even see one that seems to be around 5. And so that's the upper end. But he seems to be clustering his high end range around 16. His average still seems to be around 20. So I would say that there is recency bias. This graph seems to show evidence of it. but I would say it's not as extreme as regularly in the top 15. I think that's not happening as much as it seems, and so you don't have to worry about it. And it's already beginning to tail down again. We'll see what happens after we have a couple more post Senior Bowl mocks coming in, because the Senior Bowl just concluded as of this recording. I did not watch it. I did watch some of the practices, but I didn't watch the actual game itself. I never do. But yeah, I shouldn't say never. I try not to. But yeah, I would think that a lot of this is kind of recency driven. I think it'll bounce back. I think it'll bounce back down to around the 30s, in which case, then yeah, the Lions or the Bears or even the Vikings might even trade down and be able to select him. So there is some recency bias. I don't think it's as extreme as it seems. So yeah, that's something to be concerned about. Very often, though, when quarterbacks do kind of jump up post the regular season, it seems like there is a lot of recency bias, but then it still happens. So like a pretty good one is Blake Bortles, for example, jumped all the way up to 3 and he just kind of stayed there, and that's ended up being where he went. I think, Josh Allen's another one. He ended up going, 8 or something like that. Some of these guys do end up going that high, just because as journalists are much more likely to talk to front offices about this sort of stuff, or team scouts about this sort of stuff, we get a better understanding of where teams have evaluated them. So sometimes the jump in the mock draft is not a product of, suddenly everyone is blinded by their performance in the last couple of games. It's that we're getting a lot more information from teams about where they're actually and where they have been placing these players. And so it's not as if they went up team boards, although they probably did. It's that we're getting better information about where they truly are. So that's part of it too. I think that he's probably going to go outside of the top 15, though. I think he's probably going to go in the 20s.
Beef Brewski asks, which Vikings player do you feel has the most sleeper vibe? Your vibes here.
Vibes.
Yeah, which Vikings player do you feel has the most sleeper vibe potential going into next season? Do you think they can sustain the vibe throughout the season? God,
you didn't read the beginning of the question, though.
No, I didn't, because it was just a joke. But we were gonna be adding in a new corner here. It was so for James's BDSM con. Never mind. Which Vikings player do you feel has the most sleeper vibe potential going into next season?
What did Brandon on College Humor call it? Besties doing social media?
Yes.
Yeah. Besties doing social media corner. Which Vikings player do you think has the most sleeper vibe potential going to next season? God, the vibes, man. So the issue is, I think the vibes are Chad Beebe. That's the vibe. And I disagree with it. I think that the vibes in this one specific circumstance are a little bit off. But I think given Beebe's late season performance, some clutch, first downs and I believe a touchdown, that feels kind of, like he's got sleeper potential. You take a look at some of these other players. Maybe Tyler Conklin is the best example of someone else who's got sleeper vibes going. And I think Conklin can sustain those vibes. I am not confident that Beebe can. And the reason this is because the Vikings might trade Kyle Rudolph. And if they trade Kyle Rudolph, that obviously means a ton of opportunity for Irv Smith, but it could mean some opportunity for Tyler Conklin, who, again, played pretty well late into the season. So we've got a couple of Vikings that have that opportunity. I don't know that any offensive linemen have that vibe. I don't think any defensive linemen have that vibe. Certainly no backup linebackers. And I don't think Cameron Dantzler's a sleeper. Maybe Jeff Gladney is. But I think the most sleeper vibe belongs to either Tyler Conklin or Chad Beebe. I don't think Beebe can sustain that vibe. I think that it's going to die down, especially if the Vikings end up acquiring another veteran or a draft pick to play at third receiver. But Tyler Conklin, he might get more opportunity than he'll lose this offseason. So I think that he can sustain it. I think he's got the energy.
To all of you who listen and contribute to the mailbag, whether it be through email at norsecodepodcast@gmail.com or at Twitter, on Twitter at NorseCodeDN, please stop encouraging Arif's bad behavior with the vibes.
What?
just
James, you're bringing some pretty bad vibes to this podcast.
Yeah, that's just what I do. Josh Wells asks, for a Reef's Kaiju Corner, why do the Godzilla vs. Kong trailers focus so much on them fighting when audiences only want to see the slow-paced human stories? Tale as old as time. Every Godzilla movie has some slow plot about human interest stuff that is just painful.
The Mothra one was great, though, because it had like those weird alien twins.
Yes.
Those were great.
I watched so many of those when my kid was born and was like staying up all night. And Netflix just had this wealth of bad Godzilla movies that I just would
old
just sit up
Godzilla.
and
Don't
watch.
call them bad. Old Godzilla movies.
Well, the Godzilla involving Rubber Man in a suit or rubber suit in a man. Yeah. Anyway, it was just all the classics were there, especially the Mothra one.
Where's the one where he was fighting alongside the guy actually meant to be a guy in a suit? Because that's the one where he does like the amazing like kickflip or whatever, or like he goes onto his tail and then kicks forward. You remember that? That clip was famous now.
Yeah, he slides forward on his tail.
Yeah, an amazing clip. And then after that he like poses like he's a boxer and he does like a little dip move just cause, like, amazing. I don't see how you could call those movies bad. Yeah, slow-paced human stories. That's why we loved the first Pacific Rim and not the second. Well, that wasn't really a slow-paced human story, but it was a human story.
Yes.
You know what the thing is? I thought that so I liked Pacific Rim way more than Pacific Rim 2, but I thought that from a technical perspective, Pacific Rim 2 probably did more stuff better, but it was just kind of hollow and empty, so it didn't really matter. Like they hit the Act 1, Act 2 notes a lot better. They established characters a little bit easier. They introduced some concepts. They didn't rush some stuff, which was my issue with Pacific Rim. But man, when the music hits in Pacific Rim, especially near the end, I'm feeling it. And I cannot say that about Pacific Rim 2.
So let's get Dusty in on this next question. Ryan asks, what do you look for in cookware? Bought some ceramic coated pots and pans to work with induction top in my new place. 2 years later, the coating is worn out. Do I, get the set route again or go a la carte and get some nonstick or some stainless steel?
I think I know what Dusty's going to say, but I want to hear what he says.
Okay. I mean, my go-to, what we have here at home is just a set of heavy bottom stainless steel pans that work on induction burners. You can either look for the little induction ready stamp on the bottom of the pan, or you can just bring a magnet to the store. Cause that's how
they work. Yeah.
Yeah. We have like a portable induction burner that we occasionally use for this or that, and we love it. We can use our nonstick, we can use our stainless, you can use cast iron on it. As far as buying like sets of new pans, if you're the kind of person that has money to burn and really cares about how your pans look, then go for it. But our pans live out of view unless they're in use. And our preference is just to have sturdy cookware that's easy to clean, that won't wear out. A lot of these like copper finish and ceramic finish pans are, cool and they seem easy to clean at first. But yeah, if you're not like super like too careful with them, the finish will wear off. And that's no fun. So I would say stainless steel, supplement with, if you find yourself cooking certain things that stainless is not appropriate for, then just get a used nonstick that's not scratched up, that's the size and shape that you want, or just get like a super cheapo one, and then you don't have to sweat it when it breaks.
Okay, that's close to what I thought you'd say, but without as much invective. I don't particularly like ceramic coated pots and pans. They just don't. They take too much care, and they don't work as well for my use cases, and I think they don't work as well for most people's use cases.
Don't they do anything well?
Right, yeah. Like they are fine at like stews in the oven and like whatever. That's a fairly narrow but yeah, I don't think they do anything well. And like Dusty said, it takes a little bit more to take care of them. I also never buy sets. I don't think that you should buy sets for a couple of reasons. First, you don't actually save that much versus a la carte. Second, you don't get to customize to your specific needs. And third, you actually often, even from the same company, those sets don't give you some of what that company produces that made them so good in the first place. So All-Clad is a good example. All-Clad is my go-to if I'm buying a new stainless steel. They've got a 3-ply, which is perfectly great. They also have a 5-ply, and America's Test Kitchen testing indicates that though the 5-ply is more expensive and probably more durable if you're abusing them, they don't seem to otherwise have any more durability or performance than the 3-ply. So go with the 3-ply. It is very expensive, but if you're buying a set, you're dropping a lot of money anyway. I love my All-Clad stainless steel stuff. They are incredible. They've been very durable. They've been very easy to clean. You can do anything with them, and they do it, a lot of it, really, really well. And the only non-All-Clad thing I have is a non-stick skillet that I inherited, or rather Chelsea inherited, from her parents that didn't have any scratches on it and still doesn't. We also have a cast iron. So that's it. We've got a Lodge cast iron. We've got a nonstick from who knows where, and we've got a bunch of All-Clad stuff. And we only bought the stuff that we thought we were going to need. And a couple of years down the road, there's only one more item we need, which is a slightly smaller saucepan, because we've got a pretty big one, and sometimes we're only cooking for 2, and so we don't really need a saucepan that's that huge. And we bought like essentially 3 items from them, and we only need a 4th one now. Whereas a set, you're getting an 8-piece set, right? So you would pay more, and there's like, I have virtually no use for like an 8-inch skillet. And so I didn't buy one, but the set would come with an 8-inch skillet. And some of those sets don't even come with a 10-inch skillet, which is the fairly standard size for skillet. It's the one I use. And that's great. And then I've got a 10-inch saute pan as well. And the set, some of these sets, their saute pans are smaller than the ones that they sell individually. And so the sets are just going to come with stuff that's like non-standard sizes, or they're just not as high quality. And they're still charging you as if you're getting all that stuff a la carte anyway. So I really don't like buying sets. And it turns out America's Test Kitchen also strongly recommends against buying sets, even from companies that have graded well in their individual testing. So yeah, there's that. I think that Dusty's advice on the nonstick skillet is great, because I don't think you need to spend up for that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of really great, really expensive nonstick stuff out there that is meant to last a long time. I think from a performance perspective, they don't do a ton. But like Dusty said, get heavy bottom stuff, because it transfers heat a lot more evenly. There's nothing that's perfectly even. A cast iron's not even as people say, but it's a lot more even. It's a lot less likely to ruin. It's a lot more durable. It makes the cooking a lot better. So I usually will defer to Dusty on this stuff. And in this case, Dusty and I just happen to agree.
Oh, and if you live, or if you know of a secondhand store or a thrift store in like a really bougie area around where you live, go there and see if they have like an old, even if it's a little dirty or grimed up, see if they have some old All-Clad there.
Oh, yeah. And that stuff cleans up really easily. If there's carbonization on it, just make a scrub of like a salt and vinegar paste, just to get to that consistency of paste, and then just scrub that, and that gets rid of carbonization really well.
Yep, or oxalic acid cleaners like Barkeeper's Friend. You don't have to pay All-Clad prices to cook All-Clad food.
So the next one is specifically for Dusty. Actually, the next 2 are. Kenneth Allen asks, what does Dusty recommend for Super Bowl cocktails? I'm not sure Kansas City really lends itself to a cocktail. Do you think?
Well, it's the thing. Like for the Super Bowl, if you're going to a party, I always suggest, bring a cocktail that is representative of your favorite team, or you can troll one of your friends, like I did in an NFC Championship game recently, where the Saints and the Eagles were playing. I was going to my buddy's house; he's a big Eagles fan, and I brought a batch of Hurricanes.
Come on, man! Good Lord!
Long story.
I'm sure Kevin deserved it.
It wasn't Kevin.
Well, then now I start to worry as to whether or not this was an okay thing to do.
Well, Kevin's a Saints fan. I would never have done that. That wouldn't make any sense.
That's right. Yeah, it's an Eagles fan.
So there's no real like cocktail that speaks to me about Kansas City or Tampa Bay. And besides, there's a pandemic. You shouldn't be having a Super Bowl party anyway. So if you are zooming into the watch party, then the best cocktail is going to be whatever you like to make for yourself. If you are attending a appropriately sized gathering, depending on the pandemic situation in your locale, I recommend just like a punch type cocktail, something that you can make ahead of time, something that does not contain fresh citrus or a whole lot of bitters. Like you can try to pre-batch an old fashioned or a Manhattan, but if you do it much more than like an hour before you're going to drink it, the flavor will start to change, and not in a good way. It's a very simple punch, just some gin, steep some Earl Grey tea at like double strength, like use twice as many tea bags or half as much water, or both if you want to get real serious with it. And then just a syrup made from sugar, equal parts sugar and water, and then a third equal part of honey. Those three things together make an entirely acceptable punch that by the third or fourth one, nobody will even remember that their team lost.
So to add to this, I Googled Kansas City cocktails, or rather, because for some reason Zencaster right now is only working in Microsoft Edge, I binged it. So pay me, Microsoft. But yeah, the first couple of examples are just, hey, these cocktails are red and gold. So very clearly, there's not a cocktail associated with Kansas City. But the second recommendation is actually really good. Kansas City it does have a ton of breweries. So just get, if you can, a beer from Boulevard. Like, I think that probably helps. Otherwise, an old fashioned does lend itself to being able to produce Kansas City colors if you've got a maraschino cherry on you.
Don't make your old fashioned with maraschino cherries. Come on.
I mean, but it can. I mean, you don't because you're a good bartender. This is a Super Bowl party.
You can still have a nice drink. You don't have to, force themes into it.
He's literally asking you to force a theme.
You don't have to.
Otherwise, they evidently have a lot of speakeasies, or did during Prohibition. I don't know how this is all that different from a ton of Midwestern cities.
I will post a link to a recipe for a punch that's a little bit more involved than just like a Earl Grey tea gin punch. It's really delicious.
Is it a red and yellow sherbet punch? Because that's the 12th item on this list.
Oh Lord, no frozen drinks in February. That's.
What about rosé spritzers?
That is something that I would enjoy. I tend to like stuff like a Capoletti or Mezzodi rather than Aperol or Campari. But yeah, rosé spritzers are delicious. So this recipe that I'm going to post on Twitter and link in the show notes is for a spicy apple punch made with whiskey and dark rum, some ginger, some apple, and some homemade habanero bitters, which are not particularly difficult to make. It'll take you maybe an hour and a half to get this together. The habanero bitters recommend allowing the mixture to sit for 3 months before using, but you'll get a brighter effect if you use it the same day.
Habanero bitters sounds delicious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is a pretty good recipe. What I usually do is I'll omit the habanero bitters are spiced with like Christmas spices, basically. What I'll do is usually just make a habanero tincture, where I just take the sliced habanero and put it into, a little bottle of tequila or vodka, some, fairly neutral spirit, and then just let it soak. And then I'll pour it into like an old bitters bottle and use a few dashes of it to spice up whatever I'm trying to make. So this quote unquote hot apple punch would be my number one recommendation if you're going to an in-person Super Bowl party.
I just Googled Tampa Bay cocktails, and the first article I clicked on is just a bunch of cocktails with rum, but the rum is Captain Morgan. So very creative.
Yeah, yeah, but let's ignore that for a moment and go to Peter Teagland, who asks, for Dusty's Coffee Corner, what is the optimal time to steep light roast versus dark roast in my French press, and how long is too long to keep beans in the pantry since we stocked up on them during the pandemic level quarantines?
I'm so glad you asked.
God damn it!
I could hear you rolling your eyes. I love it.
So Dusty's going to say, first, get rid of your French press and get an AeroPress.
No, that would be better. Like a good pour over setup. For me, the time is not the big variable as far
Is
as
it temperature?
goes. It's temperature. You are correct.
God damn it, dude.
If I was gonna steep for a French press, I would steep it for just 5 to 7 minutes, no matter what coffee I was putting in it. If I was doing a nice light roast, like something that I really enjoyed, I would do the water a little bit cooler, right in the 180 to 185 degree Fahrenheit range, just to emphasize some of the brighter, sweeter, kind of chocolatey citrus notes of the coffee. For a dark roast, a lot of those flavonoids have already been like roasted out of the bean, and I feel like I get a less bitter and kind of more rich and it's chocolatey, but not in the same way that light roast coffee is chocolatey. But you get the good flavors out of a dark roast at more like 190 to 195 degrees. As far as how long is too long to keep beans in the pantry, depends on how they're stored. If they're in one of those little vented bags, like the kind of plasticky bags that Starbucks coffee comes in with a little plastic vent on the side, as long as you don't open it or like squeeze the air out of it, it'll stay good for quite a while. I would say 3 months. Once you open it, the clock is ticking. The coffee, all that like delightful coffee smell every time you open the coffee bag is flavors and aromas that
flavor leaving the coffee. Yeah.
Out of the coffee. So once your coffee is open, no matter how big the bag is, you should do your best to use it within a week. I have had some success because for a while I was buying the big 5-pound whole bean things from Costco. And I can't, try as I might, I can't drink a whole one of those in a week. So I've had some success with just sticking them in an airtight container. I prefer metal or plastic well, maybe not plastic because it will hold flavors. I like metal the best as long as it seals airtight because the enemies of coffee, just like pretty much any dry good, are air and light. If it's sealed up, few months. If it's open, within a week.
So the second question is also coffee related, but is more toward Arif. For Arif's parenting corner, when is it too late to introduce a toddler to coffee? We're concerned he's not hitting his developmental milestones.
That is an amazing question. It is always too late. No. Real parenting advice is don't give coffee to a toddler, and caffeine stunts development, which is unfortunate because I had a ton of caffeine when I was young. But from my perspective, the first coffee I had, I believe I was a toddler. I am sure if you asked my parents, they would deny it. I'm really curious as to what Rashad would say. I don't think he was even there. But yeah, I've always been really excited at the prospect of adding caffeine to my system. So I think I did have it when I was a toddler. In terms of developmental milestones, I would say as soon as the toddler strings more than a couple of words together, then it's coffee time.
When he can ask, I was gonna say when he can ask the full sentence to you, that's when it's okay.
Yeah. And the benefit here is that you develop dad strength a lot faster. Once it gets coffee. Yeah. You'll be doing a lot more.
Why would you want to make it worse? Is my question. Like, why would you want to give a
and remember, coffee is a diuretic too. So
yeah, nothing about this is a good idea. No, absolutely nothing. No.
Yeah, it's what you think sugar does to kids, coffee actually does.
Yeah. And I'm just imagining like raging fart-propelled toddlers.
So toddlers.
I've seen that. My son, his mom gave him orange soda.
Is this the cannibal one?
No. Okay. This is the one who's now 8. Back when he was much younger, for whatever reason, she had given him orange soda and was just like as a, oh, it's bubbly thing, and when whatever, the kid was fine. And then we were trying to figure out why the hell he wasn't like sleeping. He was just like bouncing around. He was terrible. It's like, what is and the first thought is, oh, was he allergic to something in it? Like what would have caused this? And I took a look at the bottle, and it had caffeine in it. And I just,
what orange soda has caffeine in it?
there is an
What?
there is an orange soda that has caffeine in it. And I about whipped it at her head.
Wild.
I was like,
That is wild.
I realized that it's a rare thing, but it's a thing. And you're like, oh,
That is funny. Wow.
yeah, it's just, ugh. Kids are the worst.
Anyway, if you want to test out how well your kid is potty trained, yeah, give them some caffeine injected orange soda.
Yeah,
You'll find out real fast how well they're potty trained.
For James's theology corner, does the Church of Ben
Dusty, I think
DiNucci,
you missed some stuff.
the Church of Ben DiNucci ordained ministers online, and what is the most appropriate first dance song at a wedding ordained by a minister from said church? As far as I know, the answer is no, but the appropriate first dance is, of course, the James Madison fight song, which you can find on YouTube. Not a big deal. Kyle Slaby asks, would Rodgers' 2020 season been better with the addition of Justin Jefferson, or was the motivation of drafting Love too great to pass up? I theorized the drafting of Love was the killing Krillin episode that pushed Rodgers over the edge, and no amount of support could ever get such results.
Yeah, so spoilers for 90s cartoons, anime. When Frieza kills Krillin in Dragon Ball Z, Goku goes Super Saiyan. We went directly Super Saiyan after that, right?
You would have to ask Dusty.
Yes.
I couldn't get over 3-week-old fights.
I mean, it was a lot easier when I tried binging Dragon Ball Z, and it's much worse when you're binging. It's a lot easier when there's like a week between episodes and you can just kind of handle it. But when it's like 40 straight minutes of like gathering energy for a spirit bomb, it gets old insanely fast.
Yeah, Dusty was much more into Dragon Ball Z than I was growing up, because I just couldn't get into the fights.
Anyway, this is I would say it's probably not the Super Saiyan moment, because Rodgers went Super Saiyan in 2010. I would say it's probably the Majin moment when Majin Buu, James, when Majin Buu controls like Vegeta and other members of the Z fighters, and they are stronger as Majin fighters. So I think it's more that, especially because it implies that he's gotten even more evil, which is great. But I don't know actually that it was Jordan Love. I think that Rodgers has no problems finding chips on his shoulder with which to fire at his enemies. So I don't know if it's that. Would the season have been better with the addition of Justin Jefferson, absent the motivation that Jordan Love provides? I actually think so. I think that the fact that I think the coaching and Rodgers kind of melded a lot better, and you ended up having a good scheme that he was now used to. Plus, now it's Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson. I think that team would have been phenomenal. I think it would have ended up in the Super Bowl. So I don't think it was just the motivation that drafting Jordan Love provided. Although if that's the case, that is just so funny to me, man, that like in order to get Rodgers to play well, you just draft a first-round quarterback that's never going to play. Amazing.
Yeah, and there was some report that came out that a team, I think it was either the Rams or San Francisco, had contacted the Packers after the loss and went, hey, so about potentially trading Rodgers, and they just hung up on him. I was like, no.
That's great. I love it.
We're absolutely not doing that. While, after Aaron Rodgers has his first Brett Favre staring into the void of his career moment after a big playoff loss, and he accidentally says something truthful in a post-game interview. It's like, yeah, nobody's really in control of anything, if you want to look at it like
who
that.
knows, man? The future's uncertain. That's why it's the future.
Yeah, it's like,
thanks, man.
it's Aaron Rodgers' existentialism corner. Also from Kyle Slaby, for James's back corner, what stretches and lumbar support products do you suggest I invest in? I'm 30 now, and this is the third time I've thrown out my back as my life is entering its twilight years.
Years.
I am looking for quality of life improvements, not underlined miracle cures.
This does suggest that he's aged. Look, I'm not here for miracle cures. I've lived long enough to know that those don't work.
I just want comfort, is what he's trying to say. Listen, as somebody who has this is where I do like the unfunny version of James for the show, where I actually get serious. As far as back stuff is concerned, obviously I've gone through a hell of a lot in the last 20, 30 years. As far as back stuff goes, I have done everything from yoga to, which is hilarious for a 6'5", 350-pound guy to be doing. It's quite funny to watch. I know because I've like had somebody videotape and like I've watched me do it. It's hilarious. I've done things like that. I've done different types of stretches, like where you put like your left foot over your right knee and then pull yourself forward. Harder to do with a gut because that's kind of how you got into this mess. I've done different types of things with stretching, and when I first really hurt my back last year, I ended up having to go into like full on traction where they pull you apart in order to like get the spacing right in your back, and it's terrible. I still see I see a chiropractor once every like 3 months now. I want to say 2 to 3 months, and I'm not in that bad a shape anymore with it. Like I've done just about everything you can minus major back surgery. Like I was taking steroids for a while to like get the to kind of like bring down some of the swelling that I had in my back. Here's what ended up working for me, and it's dumb, and I admit it. But here's the thing: is that I have never felt better. And this is not a health podcast. I'm do not hold whatever. But seriously, I bought a bike, and I got into like 20-mile bike rides, and all of a sudden my core just went it strengthened up. I am in
So it did what?
I made a sound like you would hear if you were shuffling cards.
What was that?
What was the sound?
So it was something like that, which is a sound I have heard when it goes wrong, by the way. I have heard a noise accompanied with pulling with throwing my back out, and it was unpleasant. But I got into 20 to 30 mile bike rides, which I don't know, your current living situation or whatever, but they do make bikes out there designed for larger human beings. I joke I have the world's largest bike. It is huge. It is comical to watch me go down.
Is it like a penny farthing bike? Like, is it with the giant wheel?
No, sadly, it is not that. It's not nearly as old timey as that, but it's a fantastic bike. Kyle, I'll send you something. It was not cheap. It was a couple $100 in order to get this type, but I'm telling you that I have never, it's been months since I biked. It's been since beginning of December because it was a really weird winter here. I was actually able to go out and bike a little bit in early December. And even though I haven't biked in a few months, my core is great. I feel strong. I go to the chiropractor once every 3 months. Normally before all this happened last year, I was having to ice my back every like couple hours. Like at the end of a day of working, I would have to ice my back, or I'm sitting in a weird way for the podcast. I would have to ice my back later or during, and it was incredibly miserable. I used to have to take ice packs with me when we do the shows, like when we travel to like New York or to Detroit or to Seattle. I had to bring ice packs, or I had to buy an ice pack while I was in Seattle. And I literally cannot remember the last time I iced my back. So it's not, it's dumb, but I promise you that it made me feel better. And I haven't even biked in a few months now. So there's still some like residual good things happening there. And that's the end of my rant. Nolan asks, for a Reefs Canada corner,
oh, hell yeah.
what is the biggest storyline to follow going into the CFL season? Is it Martavius Bryant signing with the Argonauts, or maybe the coach of the Edmonton football team resigning before having even coached a game?
Okay, so that sounds funny, but they did hire him for the 2020 season, which did not end up happening. And the Colts hired Scott Milanovich to be their quarterback's coach. So, it sounds funny, but it's not like insane. And he's coached in the NFL before. it is also actually funny, but it's just not as like bizarre. So obviously the top storylines are whether or not the Winnipeg Blue Bombers can run it back. They don't have Chris Streveler anymore, who was a big part of the rushing attack. They did sign Andrew Harris to a 1-year contract. He's a former Blue Bomber and now is a current Blue Bomber. He is a 3-time rushing champion for the league, and those include the last 3 years the league actually played. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they can get the rushing attack back. And then, of course, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who played against them in the Grey Cup, they've got to decide whether or not they've got the ability to retain Jeremiah Mazzoli, one of their key players, a quarterback, if you remember Oregon football. I went into the mailbag blind this episode. I didn't look at any of the things beforehand, but I did scroll down while James was talking about his back. And I did have to Google all of this.
Well, I'm glad that some positive came out of that then.
Out of your back? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm glad too, because prospects weren't looking good based on how you're talking about that back.
Yeah.
Those are probably the top storylines. I assume if they can't sign Jeremiah Mazzoli, that means Dane Evans, who was one of my favorite sleeper quarterbacks from whatever draft he was in. Was it 2017? I don't remember. Is going to be able to play. He's, I think, from Tulsa or something like that. Memphis? It looks like Tulsa. 2017. Wow, I've been nailing all of this. I've been guessing correctly on all of this. Yeah, man, that seems good. Dane Evans was pretty good in 2019, but Jeremiah Mazzoli obviously is a key piece. We'll see if they trust Dane Evans that much, and maybe he can prove that the NFL was wrong to not draft him. That's always a good storyline. Also, Martavis Bryant going to who cares? I mean, some washed out NFL veteran goes to the CFL. Never as interesting as it seems.
Don from Ohio has a question. Now that Dusty's on the show, has a question for all three of us. It says, "Dear gentlemen," it's now gentlemen since Dusty's on. "I'm offering to one of you the chance."
Wait, are you implying that if it was just the two of us, there'd only be one gentleman?
No. What I'm saying is that the opening would be different and has been different repeatedly. It tends to vary depending on how much.
Right, yeah, right. How angry he is at you. Yeah.
Exactly. It's usually "Dear Arif" and "Guy I hate." I'm offering to one of you the chance to be my best man for a wedding in Kauai, Hawaii. Your stay is paid for 10 days, and your significant other can go too. All you have to do is be there on the day of my wedding. Who am I choosing and why? Dusty's already proposed a potential trade.
Okay, so first of all, I can't imagine any pitch that I have is going to be better than any pitch that Dusty has. If Dusty wants to go, and Dusty obviously concerned about the pandemic, probably doesn't want to go, but it is Hawaii, and he can quarantine himself before and after. But Dusty has a great argument, and I can't imagine beating it. But a trade, I'm curious about.
So I pulled back a little bit on the post and or on the post that I made on Twitter because I didn't want to. The timelines were out of order, but what I will say is I accept and thank you.
I didn't say I agreed. I just said that you probably have you still have to make the argument, Dusty.
Don.
What?
Telling Don. Yes, I will go.
What? Well, if you're not going to make the argument, I'll make the argument for me. I know more about football, and Don, you clearly care about football. Let's talk about football. Also, if you pick me, you can be guaranteed that your best man won't be taller than you and upstage you on the wedding day.
Now listen.
I mean,
what's that?
What
do you got?
Excuse me. As somebody
you gonna cast a shadow on the wedding? Literally? Is that what you want to do?
Is that a fat joke?
No, it's a tall joke. You're 6'5".
Mm-hmm. So, as somebody who is a veteran of over 350 weddings,
what are you going to DJ while you're the best man? Wow, that sounds like a great argument for me. Have him DJ, have me be the best man. That way he can focus on his job.
I've done that before. Don't do that.
Also, I could probably give the best man speech.
Oh,
I'm confident about this.
I'm not entirely sure, but
Dusty, you saw my best man speech.
It's true. It was very good.
So what I'm saying here is, as a veteran of 350 wars, that there is nothing that could possibly come up that I haven't already seen and could potentially have an answer for. I have dealt with every manner of bride. I have seen just about every manner of insane thing that could happen at a wedding. I am the person that you want in there as your like utility player. The person who can figure out exactly what to do when things go south, because something's going to go south. It always does. And you need somebody that has their head on a swivel to be able to figure out.
That's a great argument. I would say pick me because I'm not a negative Nancy who's just assuming that things are going to go south. Wow, incredible. Every manner of bride. What are you trying to say about Don's fiance? Incredible disrespect. Pick me.
All right. I'll break out the big guns. It sounds like you guys are actually like fighting a little bit for this. So I'll just lay it out.
Had to make the argument.
Well, I wanted to see what I was up against. You know, I wanted the rejoinder. And,
all right. Give your rebuttal. 3 minutes.
Excuse you. My offer is this. My fiance and I are planning on getting married towards the end of the year in Belize. And
Jesus.
if you invite us to your wedding.
Oh, my God.
You and your wife can be honored guests at our wedding later in the year. And we'll make the same deal for you.
I thought Dusty was going to go with like the bartender stuff, that he'd probably throw a better bachelor party. But that's an insanely good argument too.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I mean, all that other stuff is true. I mean, I've worked weddings in the past. You've probably got people that are already working on that, but I would definitely throw the best bachelor party. I think I'd be neck and neck with the Reef in the best man speech department. But
we would see.
I think the wedding swap is the most compelling argument of all.
Good Lord. Yeah. Geez. I didn't even think about that, man. All right. Yeah. Yeah. If you want a trip to Belize, I guess pick Dusty.
I reiterate, yes, and thank you.
I've got words. I'm just biting my tongue at this point because you can't really argue with that. And finally, from Don from Ohio, he asks if we have any thoughts on the show WandaVision. So obviously, this is going to be a little bit more spoiler oriented. So if you have not had a chance to watch WandaVision, now would be a good time to find something else to do for the next 5-ish minutes or so, because I don't think we're going to go too in depth because there hasn't been very many episodes of the show.
There's only been 4 episodes as of this recording. Before we get into spoiler territory, if you're a fan of the Marvel Universe, I can't imagine that you haven't seen it, but if you haven't and are waiting on a recommendation, I would recommend it. It's been pretty fun.
Yeah. So just initial thoughts on the show. I've really liked it, although I didn't understand how the hell you could have 9 minutes of credits at the end of the episode.
They're like playing with you with those. Like I just skip them. Like
the first time,
the
first time I was like, wait, there's still 9 minutes in the. There has to be more.
That's exactly how I reacted, right? And I was like, well, maybe there's a post-credit scene. No,
it was absolutely not. I was super annoyed at the end of the first episode at that. I was like, how do you not have any? Oh, okay, fine. Overall, as a concept, I was curious as to how they were going to work it because all these commercials had, these clips of 50s and 60s things and, references to previous iterations of them like dressed up or, outfits or whatever. And I thought it was really interesting. I thought that it had a lot of promise. And so far it's been delivering. I've really enjoyed the characters. I've really enjoyed the some of the over the top like campy stuff. Like the first episode's basically something along the lines that you would see at like a Dick Van Dyke show sort of thing.
They actually brought in Dick Van Dyke to consult on the episode to get everything right.
I did not hear that. That's hilarious. Yeah. It's that sort of thing. And they really, really go like, it's not the sort of thing where they just like put their toe in the water, like, oh yeah, kind of testing it. Like they go full in on some of these and it's great.
Yeah. And none of that has been spoiler stuff. So they actually do go through like each decade of sitcoms for the first 3 episodes, so 50s, 60s, 70s. And they do a really remarkable job. And I thought the 50s stuff, they did a really great job with like the 3-camera setup, the aspect ratio, the timing on the comedic beats, even the types of jokes that they were telling.
And the commercials.
Perfect. Yeah, and the commercials. The commercials were great. And the commercials also just, it felt like there was something else in those commercials that you could maybe kind of glean something from. I don't know that has manifested in anything, but like the Stark toaster commercial had that like really ominous beeping with the red. The only color in the show thus far was like the red light in the Stark toaster, and the beeping was like very like, what is going on? It doesn't seem to have actualized anything, but it was maybe your first clue that something was amiss. The fact that this is a 50s sitcom is probably your first clue or your prior clue that something's amiss. But yeah, I loved all the camera tricks they did, and then even the special effects are like 50s sitcom-ish, like very I Dream of Jeannie type stuff. And then as you get to the end of the episode, and this is the spoiler stuff, or it's more spoiler stuff. As you get to the end of the episode, the way they use the camera changes and it becomes remarkably kind of modern. The aspect ratio changes, which is the most obvious, but the depth of field on the camera changes. Like in those 50 sitcoms, it's a very flat depth of field. Everything has basically the same amount of focus. And as you get to the end of the episode, there's like a scene that occurs, and it's kind of an ominous scene, and it's very weird. The characters that are not Wanda or Vision are acting really unusual, even for a 50 sitcom. And then the camera changes. You get much more focus on the foreground and a lot of blur on the background. So it looks like a much more modern camera. Again, the aspect ratio changes. You get Dutch angles instead of the angles that you get in the 50s sitcom. You get like the angles that you get on a modern television or even a movie. And it becomes really ominous and dark. And then it snaps back really well. I thought that was beautiful. And I think the cinematography in all 4 of the episodes, especially the first 3, because they get to play around with it a lot more, has been really wonderful. And I think that the way that they kind of play the mystery has been really good. I think that they've kind of hit the limits of playing with these sitcoms. So I'm really glad that episode 4 was a big departure from all of that. And I think that there's kind of a ceiling on what you can do, and they probably hit that ceiling. So I don't think it's like amazing. I just think that the stuff they do really well, they execute it almost perfectly. The stuff that they don't do well, they still execute pretty well. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite television show. I've seen some other people say it's their favorite television show in the past year, which fine. I don't know that that's like a huge category, but I don't know if I would put it up there. But it is really fun. I didn't like episode 4 as much as everyone else did. I certainly didn't dislike it. I thought it was a good episode. But I thought episode 4 was a lot more like, all right, everyone knows something's up. Let's fill you in. And they just go through it and they run through it and they do it well enough. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of going to be kind of fun to figure out why things are the way they are, because all they've done thus far is imply that something is off, and then in episode 4 reveal that it's off, but they haven't really told you why yet. And what they've done with Vision in the 4th episode, great, really great stuff. They play around with the snap a little bit, right? Because one of the characters that's a side character in the first couple episodes and is a central character in the 4th episode actually is coming back after the snap. If you'll remember, Vision wasn't snapped, and so his death in Endgame is permanent. And so him being in the show is like very weird. And in the 4th episode, they go into it a little bit, or they don't go into it. They present that contrast with what you know to be true in stark reality. So that's really great. But yeah, it's fun. I've enjoyed it. And yeah, the episodes are 22 minutes in homage essentially to those sitcoms that they're working off of. And when you get to the credits, that's it. You can stop. There's like 9 minutes. You don't need to, unless you're the kind of person that watches credits, in which case have fun. They're really well designed credits.
Yeah, they're quite pretty.
Yeah.
I watched 2 of them and went, this is very pretty. Where's the rest of the show?
Yeah, I think a lot of people ended up watching all of the credits.
Yeah. No, I definitely enjoyed I've definitely enjoyed the 4 episodes. The appearance, there were 2 kind of basically bigger guest stars in the second or in the 4th episode. I really liked both of their appearances. I thought it was great to kind of watch a bit of character development for her as well. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's the fact that we're this far in and we don't really have a great idea as to who's the bad person yet, who's the bad guy yet. There's certainly theories, but nothing is like concrete. So I enjoy that. It's definitely something that has my attention, and I'm gonna end up watching it for the rest of the season. All right, that is gonna be the end of this monster episode of Norse Code. Before we start plugging Arif stuff, Dusty, what is the where can we find the information on the podcast contest?
There's nothing yet, but you will be able to see it at americasnexttop.podcaster.com. And that's something to watch out for. I know,
And when it gets started, Dusty will tell us and we'll plug it on the show.
Yeah. And I'll, mention it on Twitter, but I know at least like 2 people have expressed an interest in me pursuing something podcasterly, and this looked like an opportunity. And I thought,
where else were you going to find an opportunity to get onto a podcast, Dusty?
Yeah,
a good podcast.
And with that, Arif, where can they find your work?
You can find me over at theathletic.com/author/Arif-Hassan. I have not written in 2 weeks. I've actually kind of formalized that. I'm on a little bit of not a hiatus. I just took a couple of days off to get everything right. But I'm going to be publishing again there very soon. Probably just in time for the Super Bowl, so great. But I'll be writing all offseason about the draft and stuff like that. I know that there are people who have questions about the future of the Zone Coverage podcast. Now that Sam has announced that he is no longer doing it, I want to say I don't have any answers yet. I still want to talk to Tom about what that's going to look like, but it is every possibility that there will no longer be a Zone Coverage podcast. But there is also a possibility that there could be a Zone Coverage podcast going forward. So I wanted to address that here. I have no idea right now kind of what direction that's going to go into. I still have to have some talks with Zone Coverage about the future of that podcast. So if you wanted to figure out an answer there, I'm sorry, I don't have one yet. Not because I don't want to tell you, but because I just genuinely don't have one.
All right, so that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, we will be doing the Super Bowl watch along. I'll be there at least, along with several people several people who are subscribed to our Patreon over at patreon.com/NorseCode. So for Arif and Dusty, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please remember to worry about your Gatorade consistency. And we'll be back after the Super Bowl. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's official Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. You can also find his written work at theathletic.com. I am your podcast host and producer, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at BigMono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can make a recurring monthly contribution by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. A donation of $3.50 per month does get you bonus material from the show and much more. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.